Hello, as I chew. I'm in a rush.
Start.
Sorry. Having steak and cheese nachos. Very good. Welcome back to episode 85 of the Wagner and Cratty Sports Podcast. As I continue to get myself together, a little bit of snow causes people to drive very stupidly. Not as stupidly as I expected, but
never lived in New England. Down. Snow never happened in New England.
You would.
It's a crazy occurrence.
You would think so. But we're back. Episode 85. A little bit delayed, but had to do it because of the traffic. Took me an hour, 40 minutes to get home. But it was more so, just the long travel time versus the conditions for me. The conditions weren't too bad. So that's good. Jersey numbers. We have Hunter Henry currently, Ryan Izzo, or Buzzo, as he was once called. I always loved that. Kenbrell Tompkins, KT to winner. He got in some trouble with the police a couple years ago for, I think theft or something like that. Don't know what he's up to, but legend. Crazy catch against the Saints. Never forget it. I traded Antonio Brown for him in fantasy football as a joke because I didn't really care that much about the league one year, and I won the league. So not gonna say
it worked out in the end.
Kenbrell Tompkins won me a fantasy championship, but I'm not gonna not say that. Shout out to the GOAT. Brandon Lloyd, kind of guy I forgot played for the Patriots for a while, but it was cool to see him when he was here. Chad Johnson, Aaron Hernandez, Kyle Keyser, the only Bruin to ever wear it. He was 38 in the minors, 85. When he gets called up, he's only been called up once or twice. Caleb Ort for the Sox, and Che Swan Lin, Red Sox legend, who I have actually never heard of. So that's something. That is certainly something. Brian, what's up with you?
I'm mad, to say the least. Obviously, a lot to talk about tonight. Usually, when we have football stuff, we'll usually start with football. A lot of Patriots stuff, obviously, that's come out of, franchise tech stuff, free agents galore, all that fun stuff. But we're going to start with baseball because that is the breaking, again, the just disgusting, saddening, upsetting, however you want to describe it. And at this point, for me, maddening news that once again, no deal could be done today between the MLB Players Association and the MLB. So for the second time in, 2 or 3 weeks now, we have 2 more series canceled baseball. The first 4 regular season series have now been canceled. Opening day won't start until at least April 14th. Like I said a couple weeks ago when we talked about this, got to think more games are going to be postponed because today it was qualifying offers and the very quickly it seemed like inception of an international draft, which I had to do some digging and try to figure out what exactly that was going to entail or just what the whole deal with that was. So again, I'm going to try not to ramble, but I'm going to try to just voice my frustration and anger and just overall just done, if that's even a word. I'm already trying to figure things out, what to say here, because I'm just so done with this. A couple weeks ago when we discussed this, when I talked about it, anytime I've talked about lockout, I've always wanted to put the blame on the owners. You and I have agreed that Rob Manfred has butchered this whole thing completely right from the get-go. Worst commissioner in sports. After today, and some of the stuff's come out about, Bob Nightingale, has done a great job of giving you logistics, giving you numbers, keeping you up to date on stuff, which is crazy because if anybody knows baseball and knows Bob Nightingale, he isn't really the most reliable source at times, but he's been great throughout this whole thing. He was talking about, again, minimum salaries is something that came up or has come up a lot, and how both sides have been apart. It seemed like today was the first day that the MLB, the union side of, or the MLB side of things, rather, the owners, seemed to, I don't want to say cave, neither side has really caved on this. They seemed like they came to today wanting to make deals or wanting, get closer to making deals, stuff like that. They were kind of, like I said, minimum salary stuff proposing the MLB. They proposed $700,000 minimum salary rising to $770,000. The MLB Players Association, they came back $710,000 and rising to $780,000, so only a $10,000 difference. Couldn't come to an agreement on that. That's a joke. So like I said, I've been against the MLB side of things. I'm starting to go against the players because of the stuff that happened today. You can't agree on minimum stuff like that, like salaries. Like I said, qualifying off stuff, the international draft, which I haven't even gotten into yet. which basically the way I've heard a couple people talk about it, Tony Maserati on Felber Matt did a good job today of discussing what it would be. The gist of what I got was instead of going to obviously international overseas stuff like that, places like Cuba, Dominican Republic, where we see a bunch of players come from year after year, instead of plucking those guys at the age of usually 14, 15 years old, you see guys like that, kids that sign like that. Like every other league does, like the NHL, like the NFL, like the NBA, you got to be 18. That's when you qualify for the draft for the most part. The NBA, obviously, you have to go to your college, play through that. NHL, same thing. MLB kind of want to implement something like that. It seemed like with the international draft, you couldn't take guys, again, at 13, 14, 15, stuff like that. You had to wait till they were at least 18 years old. To me, because that's how, like I said, every other league operates. I have a friend of mine, I've mentioned him a couple times, Cleo, on the show. I feel like you probably know this too. The story I think of was Alexander Ovechkin. It was the Panthers, right? Back he was 16, 17. They wanted to try to draft him early, but obviously there's rules against that. So it makes sense. You can't draft a kid when he's not ready, or draft a kid that's too young. To me, that makes sense. Again, every other league does the draft that way. It seems to work for those the three leagues that do it. Why the MLB would be against that, or why the Players Association would be against that, and I know David Ortiz was a big proprietor going against it. He brought some points. I think Jeff Passan had. I think you actually tweeted them on the Twitter page for people to go look at. To me, though, this is what's holding up baseball now. An international draft, which again doesn't to me at least. I know people argue that that some valid points are made. I just don't understand why these are the dumb things that are holding up this, holding up box, and why we can't seem to, or the side can't seem to agree on anything. It's very frustrating. I'm just trying not to completely lose it talking about this, but I just don't get it anymore. It doesn't seem like the deal is going to get done at all, because neither side wants to cater the other, and nobody wants to give or take on anything.
Yeah, sorry. At one point, I think I unmuted myself because I was gonna say something during baseball, and people probably heard me. This is for the podcast people, because people can see video wise. So you're gonna see me just mowing down on some nachos and hear it. Sorry, but I'm just I gotta eat. I gotta eat to stay alive. It's dog eat dog world.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I told you briefly before we went live. I touched on it last week too. This whole thing really has no interest to me, and I'm not saying that to crap on everything you've said. I'm saying it just from a personal standpoint.
I said the same to you, that this is how a lot of people are feeling right now. No one cares about this, and frankly, like we talked about last week, no one should. The casual fan is not going to care about any of this stuff. The day started off good. They're talking about there was some agreements, I think, on pace of play. They were gonna implement a pitch clock, which you and I both agree probably for the best case scenario. That's something that has to happen. They were going to ban the shift, which, say what you will about that. I mean, you and I both think there should be some limitations on it. You shouldn't just completely go away from it. And then the basing was agreed on. I think Az talked about that too today, saying that apparently they do that in the minor leagues, and it's increased stolen bases a little bit. So maybe with that coming to the major leagues and then coupling that with no shift, maybe you see more hit and runs. It seemed like they were trying to go for a more offensive approach, which is good, because obviously people like that, want to see offense. They did that in the NHL a couple years back with making they made the nets bigger. They got rid of the red line rule, I think is what happened. That was a while back, but you get the point. Leagues have gone through changes to make offense seem like more of a priority, and obviously people want to watch that. So when you hear that for baseball, you're sitting there going, okay, well, maybe they're onto something today. But then again, you have the money aspect of it, and the international draft and the competitive balance tax threshold crap came up again today, because basically what this argument's been about. It's turning people off. It's aggravating, like you said, the casual fan of you who doesn't care. The diehard fan of me is getting incredibly aggravated with this now, because it's to you and I, it's stupid stuff they're arguing over.
Yeah, it's just when you have a dying sport, you can't afford for this to happen, and that just sounds like the obvious, but it just really makes things
100% true.
Really makes things harder to get into in terms of rooting for a resolution. Never mind following it, and I see all these numbers, I see all these slash marks and different numbers for payment thresholds, CBA stuff, and I'm like, this is all nonsense that I will let the insiders talk about and the diehard fans, but I just truly could not care less. I don't know if you can like turn your mic down at all or something. Yours like comes in I don't know if
Very
you hear a
loud.
little static on your end. Not like static, but I don't know. Maybe if you
I
like turn it
haven't
down a
heard
little bit.
anything.
I can hear it on my
Yeah.
end too. Can you hear that little? Like when I
No.
talk, sometimes you hear a little like bit of static quickly. I don't know. It's probably not a
No.
big deal. It's nothing crazy, but just something I noticed. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the MLB is just so goddamn stupid, and
They can't get out of their
just
own way, which is like maddening. And then to go off of that too, the other day, I don't know if you saw it, that apparently whenever there is a season, they have a deal in place with Apple TV to start broadcasting baseball games on that. Because again, that's a streaming service everybody has and like is already paying for. You don't have to actually add that on. And that's more money now. That more places that people who don't want to pay for that or don't have that. I don't have Apple TV. I don't think. Those are baseball games people aren't going to be able to watch because they don't have that or maybe don't want to pay the money. And after this offseason, why would you want to throw more money the MLB's way?
yeah.
So, again,
let's just lose fans. Let's just lose
dumb
fans.
decision after dumb
It's
decision.
the same thing as with the NHL. When the NHL started doing ESPN, Hulu, even different networks, I don't know how much that factors into people's decision making. There are people out there like, no, I don't want to pay extra money for this. So they're missing out on certain games, and certain games are losing viewers in certain demographics areas, wherever, across the world. It just sucks. Like, it sucks for me, I just feel bad for baseball fans and the players. It's not even just like it hurts me. Like, it really doesn't, to be honest. I've made that clear, but it just sucks. And from a common sense standpoint, it just really upsets me. There are a lot of things in life I've come to learn over the years that like don't bother me indirectly or don't affect me or my favorite team or my favorite player indirectly. But like example, somebody makes a dumb trade or a dumb free agent signing. From a common sense standpoint, even if they're on another team, I'm like, why did that have to happen? Like, are we kidding here? Like, this is, you just know certain things are going to go wrong. You know certain things are dumb decisions. Like the NHL, let's normalize not giving every single player 29, 30 or older that's a UFA 6 years because it almost always ends badly. Even though the Bruins actually did the good thing. Taylor Hall was 28, 29 when he signed his deal, and they gave him 4 years. I think that's what the league should trend towards, but we're not talking about hockey right now. That's just a sidebar. Do we have any other baseball points?
No, the only thing I was going to talk about, because like I said, I have to put blame on the players today. I've defended them since day one, but I think they look absolutely awful, the Players Union, because apparently the MLB, like I said, I was trying to follow everything that was coming out today, Fast and Furious. Apparently the MLB gave them 3 different proposals that I was just going to quickly run through, and of course the MLB, like I said, it's become a pissing match between these two teams these two sides, for lack of a better term, where like nobody wants to give or take anything. So real quick, Jesse Rodgers of ESPN, she had the MLB proposal, the 3 proposals that were given. Real quick, proposal number 1 was sign the CBA, including eliminating draft pick compensation, of course, for qualifying offers, so teams get something. They lose players qualified in free agency, and take some time to examine the international draft. If the union won't implement in a couple of years, by 2024, the league can reopen the CBA, and then we'd have to go through this all again with the potential lockouts. I could maybe see why the MLB or the Players Association didn't want to do that proposal, because who wants to sit through this again? The second labor proposal that the MLB gave out was do the entire package without the international draft, which means without draft pick compensation. The third option was take the original deal. League gets the international draft pick compensation is eliminated. The MLB Players Association, they countered with this, according to Jeff Passan. He said earlier on Twitter, the MLB Players Association rejected the league's 3 offers, an international draft resolution, and presented its own offer. Remove the qualifying offer this year. If parties can't agree to an international draft by November 15th, qualifying offer returns and revert to the previous international system, which is how it is right now. Like, again, not simple stuff, because it hasn't been simple at all. It's been absolutely convoluted and crazy. But again, just showing that these two sides are so far off. Again, when it comes to stuff like this, basic, just common sense stuff like you've mentioned, money stuff like I mentioned with the Bob Nightingale tweet, they're still, he said $22 million apart with luxury tax threshold stuff, $175 million apart in pre-arbitration pool stuff. Again, who cares? To the baseball fan, no one cares about that. It's just a joke. Nothing's going to get done, it seems, anytime soon. And again, it's not a bold prediction at this point. Like, more, you got to assume more games are going to get canceled. And then at that point, you're sitting there going, well, we're going to have a season because now we're at April 14th. Again, we've talked about this. You still have to do spring training. You still have to get over, I think it was the number we said before. It was like 200 or something free agents signed. Like, they're running out of time. It's the whole COVID season all over again where you're running out of time to set stuff up, and you're not going to put the best product out there, which is just, it's absolutely maddening from a baseball fan standpoint, whether you're diehard, casual, whatever it may be.
Yeah, one thing I didn't read every tweet, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on what David Ortiz had to say to Jeff Passan today.
I mean, like I said, to me, an international draft, it doesn't bother me because, like I said before, every other league operates like that, and it seems to work for every other league. David Ortiz's argument, I think, was obviously kids coming from Cuba, the Dominican Republic, those type of homes. I'm trying to think of what the underprivileged, I guess, is the best word to describe it. And I think Ortiz's argument was that type of money, the millions of dollars that those kids get, is life changing. Which, yes, it is. I feel for them there. But again, every league does this, so it shouldn't, at least to me, I don't know if you feel the same way or not, to me it shouldn't be a problem to implement draft. Passan obviously had some stuff talking about, there is some question marks. Ken Rosal, I think, had some stuff to talk about, how the international free agent signing kind of goes down. It was Passan. This was Passan's thing I find interesting. He said, quote, international free agency is rife with corruption. Multi-million-dollar agreements with 12 and 13-year-olds are a reality. Kickbacks are commonplace. Trainers feeding EDs to teenage boys is not uncommon. So much is beautiful about baseball in the Dominican Republic, and so much is ugly too. So there are a ton of gray areas. Apparently, again, we're not going to go into all the stuff because we'll be here all day with just anything when it comes to the CBA talk and everything. But Ortiz, and I think there was a report too that they said a bunch of the Latin players and stuff like that were against the international draft. Obviously, probably for those reasons. That, it is life-changing money when a kid like that, you help set up your family when you get a deal like that, if you're lucky enough to get a deal. Like seeing international free agents sign in the past. But again, I'll keep going back to it. 3 out of the 4 major sports leagues have drafts and have implementations in part where you have to be a certain age to play in the league, or at least qualify to play in the league. This is something that should not be keeping us from having a baseball season.
I totally agree.
It's not a no-brainer because nothing is this, but it to me, it's this is.
I'm glad you cleared some things up because I didn't read it fully, and that's kind of the sense I got, that it was more so to set some more age boundaries, and
that's why I
take
it at least
on bare bones, not really more specific. So thanks for clearing that up. But I kind of feel the same way. It's already with a regular draft to a point where you have to be a certain age, or I think there's it's a little looser than other leagues, but internationally it should be somewhat the same way. You can't do a full 40-round draft, but maybe you can. I don't know what's going on over there with how many players they churn out, but man, that would be interesting though. 2 drafts in the same league. But yeah, it's just nothing is going right for the MLB, and it's pretty sad. Before we segue into the NFL bonanza that is going on, I just wanted to give a shout out to my high school hockey team, outscoring opponents 13-0 through their first 2 tournament games. And they're playing on Saturday against the winner of the Medway-Medfield game tonight, who I believe were both D2 teams, now D3. So should be a good test. Probably going to buy the one-day pass, stream that online during the day. Just, show some support. I love high school hockey. Went to a game last weekend with Matt, who's in the chat, our number 1 fan, number 1 supporter. It was great, but I'm not going down to the Cape. I'm too far removed. I just, don't know the players as much. I'm not driving down to the Cape anymore. I'll stream the games online, though, when I can. So shout out to them, Hanover, where I'm from. Shout out to the boys. Always like to see, hockey in Hanover thriving as a former Hanover hockey player / team manager in high school. So shout out to them. Hope they can win it all. Big bracket this year. New bracket, so unfamiliar territory. See if they could do it. Shout out to them real quick. Had to give them some props. I mean, they haven't let up a single goal. The starting goalie is the old librarian from my elementary school's son, which is weird. That just shows how old we are.
Old, yep.
Yeah, pretty strange.
That's true.
The NFL, though, I mean, we are in the midst, or at the beginning stages of probably the craziest offseason of all time.
So far, I'd say so.
It's
Absolutely.
surely getting there. I don't have like a case study of everything here, but I don't know. It kind of feels that way. Maybe it's just recency bias. Maybe it's a little bit of both.
hmm
First off, before things got really crazy, the biggest Patriots move so far of the offseason, besides not giving J.C. Jackson the franchise tag, was Kyle Van Noy being released, just freeing up a little bit less than $5 million in cap space. Could that be to bring back Jackson? Could that be to just bring in some linebacker depth that they like over Van Noy? Just general cap space, maybe a receiver. We'll talk about some receivers later. We'll see. But Kyle Van Noy, I mean, a guy that was very good in coverage, surprisingly, for the Patriots this year.
hmm
Stepped in, little bit, not lackadaisical, but like not quite himself out the gate. But once he got going, he was pretty consistently good towards the end of the season for the most part. It sucks. The guy's bounced around a lot over the past few years, but sometimes you got to make tough decisions to make some salary cap space, and the Patriots certainly needed it after spending a ton last offseason. A couple other guys I could see them moving on from are guys like Nelson Aguilar, N'Keal Harry, Henry Anderson on defense are a few guys, but other than that, nothing crazy. Chase Winovich, I think, could very well be traded. You got free agents in the linebacker group, so we'll see what they do in that linebacker group. We got to watch out for Dante Hightower if they want to bring him back for a year. If they want to bring back Jawan Bentley, who's a UFA, we'll see how that pans out. How do you feel about the whole Van Noy situation?
I mean, I was a little surprised just from the fact, like you said, obviously had a solid season for the Patriots last year. I've seen some people argue he was arguably their second best defender on the field, maybe behind Jackson, and obviously maybe Jude at the start of the year. But I mean, we've talked about it before. There's obviously, like you just mentioned, there's a lot of stuff they have to take care of. If they decide to bring back Jackson, we'll get to him in a second, but it doesn't seem like they're going to. You mentioned it with guys Hightower and Bentley. There's some big names there. So I feel like Van Noy just kind of, it comes down to one of those unfortunate things that we're seeing with other teams too. It's a cap casualty is what it is. Like you clear up, like you said, $5 million in cap space. Hopefully that gets allocated somewhere else. Maybe you go, like you said, get a receiver, make a trade for somebody. There are decent linebackers in the draft that you've discussed. And then they have some depth there. They're not the flashiest of names, but guys like Perkins, Uche, Jennings, you're hoping second, third years in the league, young guys can step up into that role that Van Noy had exactly, and maybe make that absence of Van Noy hurt a little less because he's going to be missed. I mean, he was like you said, solid pretty much all season.
Yeah, Jamie Collins is also a free agent. I forgot to mention him. And like you said, with players getting released, Bobby Wagner, I think
that's another one.
I think they just didn't want to pay him. I saw somewhere they're going to have to pay him $20.35 million. So I think it's more of not wanting to pay him that than salary cap room. Maybe it's at the same time they want a bunch of salary cap room because they want to accelerate the rebuild, get a bunch of cap space, maybe do their best to lure some free agents because it's a tough destination to lure free agents to now. We can see Tyler Lockett on the move. We'll talk about him too. But outside of Bobby Wagner, AJ Klein released by the Bills. He's a linebacker. Leighton Vander Esch is a free agent. Jordan Hicks was released by the Cardinals today. A guy I wouldn't mind on the Patriots.
That would be a bad move, yeah.
There are options. I am almost 100% sold on Leighton Vander Esch becoming a Patriot. I think that's one of the guys they're hoping to land with this cap space. Sounds like they're high on Allen Robinson and Robbie Anderson as well. We'll talk about that more in depth later. But there's even with a limited amount of cap space, they're as we know trying to expand. The Patriots could make some interesting moves this offseason. Then obviously we have the draft. We'll see what they do there if they acquire picks, if they were to trade down, do something like that. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that after the draft. But man, with all this, my OCD has been making me update my mock draft for no good reason, like crazy. Even though things are going to change with my picks from free agency trades and stuff like that. But it's just who I am. I'm a psychopath. Other news: J.C. Jackson. We talked about him a little bit. Yeah, it's okay though. I love myself. J.C. Jackson's testing the open market. Will he test the open market and cash out with Jalen Ramsey $20 million type of money, or will he circle back? That's what we have to wait and see for. As we talked about from Jeff Howe last week, the Patriots do like to do internal matters after the combine. Sometimes the combine is now over. We haven't heard anything about contract negotiations. So to me, it sounds like Jackson's going to test the waters, either sign and not talk to the Patriots, or test the waters, talk to the Patriots, then sign somewhere else, or test the waters, Patriots pony up, get some cap space, and sign him. There's 3 options. How do you feel about Jackson? Where are you leaning towards, and any free agents you think they could replace him with? Because I'm thinking guys like Carlton Davis or Trevor Ward could be possible.
I haven't taken a ton of look at the corner position for free agency. I know, again, I've heard that draft-wise, it's a decent wide receiver and corner draft. So if they're going to go somewhere, that would be where I would lean. I think he's gone. I honestly think that you said they didn't franchise tag him. I thought even if they did that, they would have traded him in the end. There was a report from Evan Lazarte that said, currently, quote, speaking to source close to Patriots quarterback J.C. Jackson, talks between Jackson and the Patriots were described as, quote, never close as we head into free agency, although you never say never. There's a sizable gap between the two sides. That, to me, just screams that Jackson's going to test the water, or is definitely going to test the waters now that he's officially a free agent. You said it. I think he's going to cast. Again, we've talked about Boyd. I think J.C. Jackson's a little overrated. Borderline number 1 corner, more so number 2 corner. But there's a team, we've discussed it before, that is going to overpay or pay him what he thinks he's worth. And if that happens, so be it. Because, the guy did have a good season last year. He deserves to cash out. And again, the team's going to offer him that he'd be dumb not to. So I just don't think the Patriots are going to give him the offer he wants. And he's probably going to hit the road and go somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know how realistic this is, but I kind of wonder if the Patriots could have signed him to a first-round tender or a second-round tender to get something for him. I don't think that's very common in the league, though. I don't know if it depends situationally. I don't know exactly how all that works, but just something I just thought of literally just now. The way I see this panning out is J.C. Jackson. He will test free agency. He will circle back, but the Patriots won't be able to offer him, or won't be willing to, depending on how much salary cap space they have at the time, won't be willing to pay him as much as someone else. From Jackson's comments a couple weeks ago, says like, oh, they don't care about me, whatever, all that stuff we talked about a couple weeks ago. It seems like he just wants to go where he gets paid the most, and it's not going to be here. So I am prepared for J.C. Jackson to be gone, sadly. I'd be very surprised if he comes back. That sucks, but he's kind of been a prick about it. So like
a little bit, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not like crying about it. I'm not like a J.C. Jackson hater, but he has been a little smug about it. I'm not trying to like ruin the guy's reputation, but I think this is a guy who could look like a pretty decent overpay. I think he's going to be a guy, at least for the next few years, that you're going to need a pretty good running mate for him to play at the top of his game. A team that knows how to deploy him as an effective man coverage corner, which we know he is. He's a ball hawk. He's going to be looking at schemes. He'll find the right fit. The team will have the right idea in mind if they're giving that much up. But just something to monitor there. I don't know. I think $20 million could be pretty rich for J.C. Jackson. I think he's probably going to get $18 million plus. And we'll see how that goes, because I think I bet the Patriots are going to try and free up a little more cap space to present him with an offer. They might not. They might just be cool with letting him go, which sucks. But I don't see the Patriots going over like 16 million, like 16, 17 million, and he can get more than that, more likely than not. So I'm prepared for J.C. Jackson to dip out of New England, sadly. Undrafted story, it sucks, but things happen. It's just the thing that sucks for me too is you don't get enough for Stephon Gilmore. You're going to lose J.C. Jackson for nothing.
So it looks bad in the long run.
The Patriots could have a pretty bad secondary next year. And
that's what I mean. We
sucks.
discussed it. Sorry to cut you off. We discussed it last week. Like, going next season, if Jackson doesn't come back, which we were both in agreement doesn't think it's going to happen, you have, not that he's going to be injured at the time, but we'll say an injured corner and Jonathan Jones coming back and an overpaid, shitty Jalen Mills. Like, hopefully you don't hope the Patriots are thinking that Jalen Mills will jump into a number 1 corner role and thrive in that, because I think that's going to happen. But, I mean, the only hope I have here is, you just kind of mentioned it with, being the undrafted guy that Jackson was. They do have a good track record in that. So I'll give credit there that maybe they're able to find another one of these guys. But in the past, they've had number one corners, so you can afford to bring in an undrafted rookie and develop them for a year or two, and then have them step into a number one or number two role. You don't have that right now with Jackson being gone, and like you said, Gilmore leaving last year and not getting the what they should have got back for him. Like you're in a really bad spot right now.
Yeah, I don't, just go into options to replace him too. I think they will draft a corner within the first 3 rounds.
They
More
have to.
likely
Yeah.
the first two. We've talked about that a lot.
Yep.
I think Charvarius Ward will be too rich for them. I think Charvarius Ward's probably, this is just a pure guess, probably going to get like 12, 13 million a year, maybe more. I don't know what the cornerback market's like exactly for him, more so Jackson. I don't think a Stephon Gilmore reunion's happening.
No chance.
Joe Hayden's possible, but I'm not like totally high on Joe Hayden at this point in his career. I think he's slowly declining. He is 32 as well. Like maybe that's a guy you signed for a year, but I'd rather not sign a 32-year-old corner. Kyle Fuller is very possible. Tavon Young was released today, I think, from the Ravens. I wouldn't mind Tavon Young. Patrick Peterson's kind of old. Bryce Callahan is entering his 30s. Not huge on him. Jason Verrett, high upside since the day he was drafted, but the guy gets hurt all the time.
So
Xavier Rhodes would be nice depth. Actually, Spot Rack, I'm reading off the list here, just picking names that I like. They have a thing for market value. Calculated market value for Charvarius Ward is $9.9 million. So I would do that in a heartbeat if I were the Patriots, but we don't know where they want to spend their current cap space or any they're going to have. Darius Williams is one of the names I like the most. I brought up this list because I knew there was a name I was forgetting. But he's the guy that's going to be expensive too. They have his market value listed at 14.6. So maybe they're willing to spend that, but not like the 18 plus. Jackson is probably going to get Darius Williams as 28. And I also like Carlton Davis, I mentioned too. Not too bad. PJ Williams, Kwan Williams, are a couple other guys I like, but I'm not going to run down every name here. There are some options, but none of them are as good as J.C. Jackson. I'd love to see them even get one of the better corners like Carlton Davis or Charvarius Ward, then draft a guy in the first round. That's the ideal replacement route. I currently in my mock draft have them landing Andrew Booth. I think it's very likely that Andrew Booth is on the board. Could be a guy the Eagles like though and take with one of those 3 first-round picks. But I really like Andrew Booth Jr. In the second round, you get a guy like Darian Kendrick. I doubt Kyer Elam, Kyler Gordon follow to them, so I don't think you're looking for a corner in the second round unless you really like someone a little bit off the board. But in the second round, I have them drafting Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver out of Kentucky. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Rondale Moore, speedy, shifty, undersized guy. I think Rondale Moore, has more better quickness, but kind of like the same type of gadget guy, a little bit of small differences, but I love Wan'Dale Robinson. I've been reading up a lot on him, watching some film on YouTube as well. I'm really kind of going all in on Wan'Dale Robinson. He's become one of my favorite receivers in the draft. So I'm just going on a tangent. Don't really need to talk about that much more. We'll talk about that as we get closer to the draft. But speaking of receivers, Greg Bedard reported this probably about 4 or 5 days ago now, that the Patriots do have interest in Robbie Anderson. We had another report, I think it was from Mike Giardi today, saying that's still a thing. Robbie Anderson, I mean, a guy that's been the subject of bad QB play in his career. So
that's for sure.
Some people might not like him for that reason. They might not like him because he's kind of a beanpole and he's a little inconsistent at times. But I think with a good quarterback, good offensive line to give the quarterback enough time to throw the ball, Robbie Anderson could really thrive here. I don't think he's a guy that would cost a tremendous amount to acquire in a trade. But it's a guy too, like we have the stats listed. His last season with the Jets, he almost had 1,100 yards, but they only hit him in the end zone 3 times. If you can get him back to that 1,100-yard range, I bet you can get him in the end zone 7, 8, 9 times easy, very easy. I think if you get Robbie Anderson, he has a career year here. If you get him, comfortable, he gets up to speed, stay healthy, all that stuff. And the other thing that came in that was from Greg Bedard's report, that if that were to happen, Nelson Aguilar would likely find his way out. I'm totally fine with that. I just don't think Aguilar is a great fit. I don't think him and Mac Jones were on the same page as much as guys, anyone in the running game. Mac Jones had a very good connection with his running backs. He'll have James White back most likely. You got Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne. and Jacoby Myers establishing real big-time connections, good chemistry with Mac Jones. I think Nelson Aguilar is the odd man out. If they can't trade him, I think they should just release him. I don't think there's any harm in cutting bait with him, but he does have a reasonable contract. Maybe somebody will give you a pick or like 2 late picks for him. But yeah, I don't know. The more and more I think of it, the more and more I think the 2 guys departing from the receiving core this offseason are going to be Nelson Aguilar and N'Keal Harry.
Oh, it's got to be. Those are the obvious ones. Do you have Nelson Aguilar's, what his cap is up there right now? Because the thing I was going to say is, I mean, Robbie Anderson's a nice piece. Like, I don't mind Robbie Anderson, but I feel like if you were to require him, you're kind of just getting a slight step up from Nelson Aguilar, at least to me. Like,
I don't think
he just
so.
doesn't.
I don't know.
He just doesn't like.
I like Robbie Anderson from like a guy who can separate better than Nelson Aguilar.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah.
I think he's not like an amazing separator, but I like him in like a tightly contested situation much more than Nelson Aguilar. I think he's got better hands. I think Aguilar had a good season in a good situation with a great QB. I do think Derek Carr is a great QB in Las Vegas. But Anderson hasn't reached his full potential. I think with Mac Jones and with the Patriots, he'll have a career year. A guy I could see hitting 1,100, 1,200, maybe even 1,300 yards as the number 1 guy, and like 7, 8, 9 touchdowns. Not even kidding. I think if they get Robbie Anderson here, he could really shine and find his landing spot he's been looking for a while. Nelson Aguilar, yearly cash, he's making 9.8 against the cap. He's making 14.8. So
okay,
yeah, it's
I just don't
tough.
see him as a. I just don't see him as a number.
Like hit, I think Robbie Anderson's the number 1 on this team.
I see. I differ with.
Someone tweeted 9.8 as the cap hit, so that's what I was mixed up for. 14.8 is much harder to trade. So yeah, I think they would have to release him. I think Robbie Anderson's the number 1 on this team. Based on what they have, I think Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers. Yeah. Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers are number 2, like 1A 3s. Ideally, when you get a good top receiver, Allen Robinson's name's been thrown out there as well. I think this could be a good bounce back spot for him, but we'll talk about him a little bit later. Yeah, I think Robbie Anderson will be a pretty decent upgrade. I don't think they need to draft a receiver in the first round. It'd be nice, but I think corner's a bigger need. And I think to narrow your focus, you can trade for Robbie Anderson and focus on a corner or a linebacker in the first round. Or, if Jordan Davis were to drop, you pair him up with Christian Barmore and just let them absolutely go nuts for the next 10 years. Patriots have options. But yeah, that's about it on Robbie Anderson.
My thing with him, really quick, is
I like him a lot. I would be really cool with it.
It's like I was going to say, don't get me wrong, I like him as the player. He's a good receiver, but you bring up the point that you think he'd be number 1 on this team because of what the Patriots have, and that's kind of where I differ. Is like he's going to be number 1 here because you have a couple of, let's just put it lightly. You have some fringe number 2s, mainly number 3s. You saw them last year. Get a guy in Aguilar who's a number 3 receiver. Like, to me, it's just you're replacing Nelson Aguilar with a slight step up as Nelson Aguilar. Like, I think Anderson's
that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do.
I just don't think he's like. I think you need a true number 1, like an Amari Cooper, or we'll get to them in a second. Amari
Cooper makes too much money, and the Cowboys freed up $22 million in cap space. So I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that they're still going to do this and get even more cap space, or they're freeing up room to sign Michael Gallup. Maybe they want to keep both.
Back, yeah.
I don't think Amari Cooper's coming here. I'm just going to put that out there. We don't even have him in the outline.
Okay.
There's just too much money involved. I don't think that would work with other areas they need to address, but I'd love it. Yeah, I don't know. I think you have to, at this point, you're not going to get like a guy like Chris Godwin. He was tagged. I don't think I think Allen Robinson, at his best is a guy that's going to be better than Robbie Anderson a little bit, but Allen Robinson, although he played for the Bears, is a guy I'm a little hesitant on. I think they could make it work here, but I need to see it to believe it. Maybe this guy is just a different player with how the Bears have probably scarred him.
That's my thing.
like I said, he could bounce back here. I'll give out some other teams. I think he could bounce back here.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't care which one they get. I think at this point, it seems like those are their two main targets. Get one of them. Get some help at linebacker
You
corner.
have to. Like,
yeah, you have to get one of them. It's like I think the Patriots could be fine in the receiving game without getting a guy like that because they do have two solid tight ends. Even though Johnny Smith had a tough year, I think he will bounce back at least a
gotta
little bit.
use them too. That's the problem.
You gotta
You
use
have
them.
to use both guys.
Yeah, so you have other guys like you have not a true number one in the receiving core, but you have two guys that are capable of being pretty good tight ends, one proven, one not. So far as a Patriot, then you have a great running game. So like it would be a little bit different of an approach for me at the situation if the Patriots were really lacking in other areas. Their offensive line is good. They're gonna have a new play calling scheme with whether it's Belichick and someone else or pretty much all Belichick on offense. It's going to be a lot different, but it sounds like they're looking to upgrade whether their sights are set on a first round receiver or not, or someone on the free agent market or trade market. It sounds like it's a priority, and I'm sure that makes Mac Jones very happy. You put in here about Henry McKenna's quotes on the Patriots' approach to free agency. If you want to segue us into that.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that kind of stood out. It was the McKenna thing from a couple of days ago, and then Burt Breer, too, had an interesting comment on Toucher and Rich on Monday that kind of, to me, worries me about how the Patriots are going to approach this free agency. And obviously, we've already seen cut ties with a guy like Van Noy, so it kind of backs up what Henry McKenna said. And his comment was, quote, starting to feel like Patriots free agency plan is going to alarm a lot of fans and radio personalities. The approach is likely to be the opposite last year, where Bill Belichick struggled not only to retain his paying free agents, as we've seen J.C. Jackson so far, or not really J.C. Jackson, he hasn't gone anywhere yet, but you know what I mean. And then McKenna also said, but to also bring in big names. So maybe, like you said, we want a guy like Amari Cooper because he might cost too much money. This was also from Henry McKenna, along with his tweet. He said, quote, considering the Patriots haven't freed up cap space yet, that was obviously before the Van Noy cutting. He said, here's what I guess happens in free agency over the next few weeks. He says, stays to Karras, Jacoby Myers, Matt Slater, James White, Nick Folk, and Ryan Hoyer. Goes, he has J.C. Jackson, Devin Cordy, Dante Hightower, John Bentley, Trent Brown, and Jamie Collins. And if that's what he's going, then I would love to know what this team's going to look like next year, because that's pretty much every one of your premier free agents is out the door. Plus, you already add on a
I'll say
pretty solid lineup
this
that
just
is
real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this just real quick. I think there's a chance all of those guys stay that he mentioned. Maybe they let Brian Hoyer go just, because save a little bit of money where you can. Maybe you bring him back in the summer when you have a little bit more wiggle room. You just, keep him out of the mix just to save a little bit. I think there's a solid chance Trent Brown's gone just because they don't have a ton of cap space.
Yep.
That the thing that would suck about that is if they lose Trent Brown, they probably want to replace him in the first or second round, even though as I've made it clear, I think they have bigger needs. Dante Hightower can go. Jawan Bentley can go. Jawan Bentley would be fine to bring back, but I'd rather just have that money to throw towards better players, even though, whatever you would pay Bentley isn't going to, make or break you getting a guy from that money you save alone. It's just going to contribute to your overall cap space, I think, if that makes sense. I think J.C. Jackson's gone. I think Devin McCourty stays. I really don't see McCourty retiring, and if they don't sign him, I think he probably would retire or go play in Miami with his brother. That's it. Maybe he doesn't want to play there, in Miami with the whole situation going on and no more Flores. Maybe he just wants to play with his brother and he doesn't care. I think the Patriots will find a way to bring McCourty back. I don't think he's going to break the bank. I think they'll get him back for another year cheap. But that's just my thoughts on that situation. But yeah, this, it seems obvious, but a tweet like this or thoughts like this can really put things in perspective to how different the Patriots could look next year. And, that's what
I mean.
About. But some teams, just look more different than others when all is said and done.
Well, the one I was going to say is if obviously we both think Jackson's out the door, if for some reason they were able to lose McCourty as well, their secondary is going to be atrocious next year. I don't care who they bring.
So bad.
It's going to guys that have to learn the system. You're losing your two best coverage guys or just defensive backs out there. You're going to be in huge trouble.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the safety market looks like on free agency. I'm not going to go through the list like I did
Mm-hmm.
with corners because it's just not super necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I will throw out a couple guys. If they do lose Devin McCourty, I think safety becomes an option. And if I'm throwing out some safeties, I'm throwing out Jaquan Brisker, uh, Jalen Pitter or Pitre. I don't know how you pronounce it. He's kind of a late second guy. But two guys I really think they could like are in particular are Lewis Seen from Georgia and Daxton Hill from Michigan at safety. So keep those names in mind. If they do lose Devin McCourty, I think there's a good chance they would try to replace him in the first or second round because safety isn't the biggest need on teams'
No,
lists, which
you
is
have
kind of
yeah.
why teams are kind of going back and forth. I think on Kyle Hamilton at the top of the draft, even though Kyle Hamilton's probably the best safety prospect we've seen in a few years. He's 6'4", 220, extremely good. Had some question marks. I think I heard at the combine, but a guy that's going to be amazing, an amazing player. Probably go in the top 7. You gotta consider that with guys like Hill and Lewis Seen if you really want to replace McCourty. And the reason I think that is because it's been such a position, at least for McCourty in particular, of stability for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You could see like a drop off in the Patriots secondary that we've never seen in terms of position specific because McCourty's been so good for so long.
So
They
like
could see that as a massive hole all of a sudden and put it right to the top 3 of their biggest needs. And
mhm.
just something to monitor. Watch out for Daxton Hill, Lewis Seen, um, maybe a guy like Jaquan Brisker as well
Mhm.
the if McCourty does not end up a Patriot next season. Just a couple names I'll
Mhm.
throw out there.
The one thing I was going to say about you talk about the huge dip in talent at that position, it's almost like it would be echo another position that dropped off tremendously after one certain piece that had been there for quite some time decided to up and leave, and then kind of left the Patriots with nothing, being obviously the quarterback position from a couple of years ago. The other comment I wanted to talk about too, which kind of worries me about the Patriots' approach to free agency, and just I think it goes without saying it's a questionable offseason for them already with you. We've talked about coaching decisions they've made. We just mentioned obviously the fact that it doesn't look like they're gonna want to bring J.C. Jackson back. Burt Breer on Touch and Rich, like I said, had an interesting comment talking about how our teams have looked at the Patriots, which I found, like I said, kind of shocking. He said, "quote I had this prominent agent tell me a story which blew me away. He told me the Patriots are still operating like it's 5 or 6 years ago. They can go in with premium free agents and can say to them, quote, we're not going to meet your price, but if your market craters, come back to us and maybe we can do a 1-year deal." Berber also wanted to say, and this agent said to me, what are they talking about? Yeah, maybe I'd send my guy there when Tom Brady was there to restore his stock, but why would I send them there now? I mean, to me, we kind of saw that code in OBJ when he was asked about it back at the Super Bowl. If he ever thought about joining the Patriots when he hit the open market, obviously after he left Cleveland. And he said, yeah, again, maybe 3 years ago when Tom Brady was there, but now not so much. So, like, that to me kind of worries me. Like, we've talked about it, some decent needs, some pretty important positions, wide receiver, obviously corner, but more so wide receiver. Like, I think you need to get a guy that is a legitimate number one in here. And if you're going to these meetings, say going to a meeting with Allen Robinson, don't want to pay him what he thinks he's worth because they think they can operate like they have Tom Brady when it's not the case anymore. That's, again, it's going to be another head-scratching move by the coaching staff or just, how they approach the offseason. So, like, that worries me a ton that we're still operating like it's, like Breer said 5 or 6 years ago, and you have the greatest quarterback on the planet that can cover some of your holes, and you just don't.
Yeah.
So,
for me, the way I look at it is in terms of like everything all encompassing. If you lose Trent Brown, you put Michael Onwenu back in the fold. That's fairly easy. It's not the ideal situation, but if you had to lose Trent Brown and you have a good guy to replace him, it's not the end of the world. If I'm picking one, and that means adding a corner or a good linebacker over a receiver, I'm going defense because I think their receiving core is good enough, especially because you
yeah,
have two good
exactly.
tight ends. I think
Yep.
Jonas Smith is going to contribute more. You have the running game. I think if you have to pick one side of the ball to prioritize, it's defense easily. I'll say this. Some people might disagree with me. I think adding a number one receiver is a luxury. It's a luxury. It's nice if you can, but you're talking serious holes on defense that are going to make your defense look very porous. If you lose Jackson, McCourty, any combination of the two, and can't replace them because you have a receiving core and a quarterback that can get you by in a running game that is pretty good and probably going to be one of the better units in the league with a full season of the duo under their belt, ideally, and potentially James White back. Defense is the main priority. I don't want people to get that twisted, and I'll die on this hill for anybody who might be out there. I'm not like trying to call anybody out that thinks number one receiver is the bigger priority. Sure, a number one receiver is luxury. You had guys that stepped up last year. You have good tight ends. Kendrick Bourne could build on where he left off and have a better season. Jacoby Myers could be due for a breakout season if last season wasn't already considered one to some capacity. Maybe they draft someone in the middle rounds.
I would say maybe if they keep him,
maybe they draft a second, third, fourth round receiver, and he contributes. No,
he's not going to blossom as the number one receiver or the first round wide receiver that he was projected. Okay, all right.
Good thing you're sitting down because I'm about to break some news to you.
Mind-blowing.
Speaking of receivers,
I was just real quick.
One of the first things that really
didn't want to cut you off. But real quick, I was going to say, just kind of along with your point, that I think that the defense was the biggest need. Was kind of figured out when you got your asses kicked in twice by Buffalo in a span of 3 weeks apart from it. Like, that's when you're like, all right, you need to focus on defense. Forget about the offense. You can skate by with what you have. Like you said, I think it's perfect that you said a number one receiver is a luxury more than anything else. Because
I'll say this too.
There are holes.
I mean, if they don't plug holes at least, to a serviceable level on defense, they're going to miss the playoffs.
I don't think that's too far.
Miami's probably going to be better.
Yep.
Buffalo's going to be very good. The Broncos are going to be better.
Denver's the third best team in the AFC right now.
The Chiefs will be good. The Ravens will probably be better with the full season of Lamar Jackson and any other moves they make. They have some moves.
The Colts are probably going to be better.
Line losing Alejandro Villanueva and Bradley Bozeman probably as well at center. The Colts, I don't know. It depends on who they have at QB. I don't think they're going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Just going to put that out there. They just traded a QB with a terrible. They just traded a QB with a terrible contract. They're not going to trade for a new one.
True.
I think the Colts are 100% going to go for a QB that is cheaper, or with that now 42nd overall pick they have from Washington in that deal. Maybe a guy like Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, if one of them were to fall. I don't see that happening. They need a cheaper option. They need at least a stopgap if they don't get a QB in the first two rounds. And Jimmy Garoppolo is not that guy. This is a team, I think, with this type of move is trying to. I could see it, but they shouldn't. And that's another one of those moves, like I said earlier. If they do that, they're fucking stupid. Because why did you trade a QB with a bad contract if you're just going to bring in another one? And a guy that hasn't proven anything really substantial. Why would you do that?
Sucks. Like, that's why.
It's just.
Because you saw
Carson Wentz is better than Jimmy Garoppolo.
I don't know about that.
Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, he is. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm sorry. Jimmy Garoppolo is not good. He's just simply not good.
We
saw Carson Wentz at his best. Carson Wentz at his best last year was a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. I'll say that. I was
going to say is
Carson Wentz
last year when
Carson Wentz is a live hand grenade. Carson Wentz is a live hand grenade. You, for the first snap, you get close to pulling the pin, and at any time you can pull the pin and it can blow up. But I will take Carson Wentz over current Jimmy Garoppolo because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is consistent enough. I don't think he's a guy that's shown anything super overwhelmingly great in the playoffs. Neither is Carson Wentz, but they both have bad contracts. Carson Wentz has shown better upside in the past. I will take Carson Wentz over Jimmy Garoppolo. Clearly, the Colts don't like him. I can't blame him.
The only thing I was going to say,
if the Colts trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't get them. I really don't.
The only thing I was going to say, a couple points. I mean, like I said, I think it's a decent move if they do it. Is you saw what happened last year when the Colts needed to trust Carson Wentz. One, he got COVID and screwed him over, and then the second, obviously, last game of the year he played horrible, and they obviously didn't make the playoffs. And on the Garoppolo point of things is, I mean, yes, they went to. The point at first I was going to make.
But what is one thing real quick? What is better about Jimmy Garoppolo than Carson Wentz? There is nothing to me that you can say outright that Jimmy Garoppolo is much better at. I think they're very similar. I would probably take Jimmy Garoppolo in a big game over Carson Wentz, but in terms of getting you to the playoffs, I would trust Carson Wentz. If he can play like he did this past year, I would take Carson Wentz because overall I think Carson Wentz was solid, but he's a guy that game by game I am leaning on him screwing you over more so than I am him winning you a game. I'll say that.
I don't know.
That's my
I
spiel.
just think
it's pretty complicated, but I think they're both very complicated QBs.
Oh, absolutely. But the way I look at it is the Colts were more so a pretty solid defensive team with a really good running back last year. San Francisco was a very defensive team with some solid running backs with Garoppolo quarterback. Obviously, they were a game away from going to the Super Bowl. Like, I don't know. You put Jimmy Garoppolo on that team. The Colts defense carried him most of the way last year. Jonathan Taylor, Garoppolo doesn't have to do a lot of work there with Jonathan Taylor. He can, ride his coattails.
I don't think you're getting any better. I don't think you're getting any better, any better position to compete if you have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Game or two
I
better.
think the Colts at this point. I really don't. I think you've had 5 QBs in the past 5 years for the Colts. You need the guy of the future, and you need to start him like right away, or you run with Sam Ehlinger and the rookie. You let them split games, or you bring in a veteran and you draft a QB and let them battle it out before a guy like Sam Howell, Corral, Ritter, someone takes that spot.
That
Carson Strong from Nevada, someone takes that spot. They need someone more than Carson Strong. I'll say that. I think Sam Howell will be a great fit in Indy. I think it's possible that he makes it to them. Yeah, but I mean, back to the common sense thing. I'm just going to be really upset from a common sense standpoint if they bring in Jimmy Garoppolo because I don't think anybody should trade for Jimmy Garoppolo with that contract. I think you just got to make San Fran work for it because they have the contract. You got to make it work for it.
So let me ask you this then: real quick on the Wentz thing? What is common sense of Washington trading for him? Is he that much of a step up from Tyler?
Washington is the dumbest owner in sports.
It's an idiot franchise, so that's obvious. That's easy answer.
I feel the Colts should trade for Taylor Heineke if they want a cheap option to pair with a rookie quarterback. Taylor Heineke's the perfect guy to do that. Taylor Heineke talked on Pardon My Take a month and a half ago how he knows there could be a QB competition. He knows they could bring someone in Washington. He's cool with it.
Wentz should not have been the guy.
He's cool with it. If they trade Taylor Heineke or let him go, I don't think they should let him go for free. I think they could get a draft pick or two for him. If I'm the Colts, I'm kind of surprised the Colts didn't ask for him in the trade.
They call him back up and
why not?
Because if you're Washington, I feel like you're in a much better spot. You just talked about Colts looking for the next guy. I feel like Washington would have been better off if you keep Heineke for. It's got to be at least $14 million cheaper. What would have been than bringing Wentz and drafting the next guy in Washington.
I'll say this. You ready for this? I would rather have Taylor Heineke than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Ooh, I don't know about that. Jimmy Garoppolo
I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo
as we joke
is
about
any
Garoppolo,
good. I do not think he's very good. I just don't think he's very good. That Super Bowl, I'm sorry, just really means very little to me.
It's fair. Yep.
Because of how he performed and
That's true. I mean that is kind of Garoppolo's a good quarterback with how
Garoppolo can make plays. I'm not saying this like Garoppolo is, not serviceable at all, but he's a guy that doesn't move the needle. He's a guy that probably can't win a playoff game unless he's got a really good team surrounding him, really good receivers. He just he doesn't really do anything.
He's not going to take a game for you. Which
he has moments, but I really, really don't see it with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's nothing crazy to me. He really isn't. He's a middle of the road guy, and so is Carson Wentz. But I think Carson Wentz, at the top of his game, is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I don't think at the same time we've even seen the top of Jimmy Garoppolo's game. So I'll put that caveat in there.
Very rarely, yeah.
Like I said, this is a very I think divisive argument. It's
that's what I mean. Who would have
thought
we would
content.
be spending?
I'm glad we've had it. I think it's a good
10 to 15 minutes
talk
on Jimmy Garoppolo versus Carson Wentz. Who would have thought that was going to be one of
it's
main
really an interesting
points.
Conundrum because
would you like this pile of crap or this pile of crap? Which one?
Yeah, San Fran's gonna have to sell teams on stuff like we're talking about, sell obviously not bad things. Like, we're kind of harping on Garoppolo, but like, he can do this. He's a second round pick. He's learned from Tom Brady. Anything they want to, like, go with to a team with a better offensive line. Be like, hey, you guys got a great offensive line and some nice receivers wherever he goes. If he goes to a team like that, we think Jimmy could be an asset. I don't know how things go, verbatim behind the scenes, but just throwing some shit out there. Receiver options. Calvin Ridley no longer an option because he's betting on the Atlanta Falcons, which is dumber than most things you could do as a player. Taking a leave of absence. We don't even know if that leave of absence was legitimate for personal reasons at this point. Not going to call him out, but with this all coming out,
that gets tainted a little bit.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not going to say he's just like he totally did it just to gamble, but I don't know. I have my doubts as to whether this was fully legitimate or not. But, if he does have issues mentally, I hope he got them taken care of. But he is off the market. That hypothetical trade we talked about that probably would never happen is off the market.
Real quick on him, I wanted to I saw a lot of people on Twitter, for one, going at the NFL rightfully so. That's the point I'm going to make here in a second. But people saying like, oh, Rice, obviously abuses people at 6 games, all that type of stuff. Josh Gordon gets suspended for I was going to say PEDs, but that's not what he was suspended for. The marijuana and stuff like that. Calvin Ridley gets at least a year for betting on football games. Like, that proves the point that the NFL's how they do stuff like that and how they crack down on punishments is completely effed up. But also, like, that rule is in place. You are not allowed to gamble on games, whether you're in them or not. That is a set-in-stone rule. So the people that were defending Calvin Ridley being like, oh, the guy's just trying to make a quick buck. Like, what's the big deal? What was it, like $15K he won or whatever it was?
1,500.
Or 1,500, excuse me, yeah. So everyone was joking about that. Like, no, not sympathizing this. That's the reason why Pete Rose will never be involved in anything baseball again, because there are, like I said, set in stone rules. You can't bet on games. You're not supposed to do it. Like, there's some leeway when it comes to like the drug, not leeway, but like obviously different things with the drug policies and stuff like that. But no, we're not defending Cal Ridley here when it comes to, like you said, doing something as stupid as he did. When, like I mentioned, there's legitimate rules. Like, this is a big no-no when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an idiot. That's really all you need to say. It's truly all you need to say. You can say more. There's more on the table for a discussion here, but that's really all we need to say. He's just dumb. Will the Falcons just let him go just because they think that he's an idiot? I don't know. There's no real reason to, because he's not counting against the cap right now. I forfeited $11.1 million. What an idiot.
To win 1,500, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Other receivers that aren't suspended for the whole year, though.
The one other thing, too, that's the whole thing, is you're a multi-million-dollar athlete. You need to go out and throw your career away for a couple $1,000. Like,
yeah, stupid as stupid does, says Forrest Gump. Allen Robinson, like we talked about earlier, is being looked at by the Patriots excessively, along with Robbie Anderson. We talked about him a little bit. I think he could bounce back here at a pretty tough year with the Bears. Some spots I like for him, the LA Chargers, they just signed Mike Williams, but I think if they really wanted to give them another weapon to help compete with quarterbacks like Mahomes, Jackson, Mac Jones, anyone, Russell Wilson now, they could add another stud in that receiving core, go with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, and Josh Palmer. That's a pretty good receiving core. I think Josh Palmer is definitely going to get more involved in that offense. Pretty good. Nothing else really to add on Allen Robinson. Las Vegas is a good option. I think, I think the Patriots we've heard rumors that they've been interested in Robinson in the past. I feel like that might trickle down to McDaniels and Ziegler. They could have some interest in him, and they have room for a receiver.
Yeah,
Arizona as well. Arizona probably going to lose Christian Kirk. Probably going to move on from AJ Green. Whatever happens, I think Allen Robinson would be a nice guy to add. Isabella's going to probably get traded, probably later in the offseason, if I had to guess. I don't think they're really in any rush. Yeah, you could use a guy like Allen Robinson if they can fit it under the cap. But and also to make Kyler Murray happy, because even though the biggest news of the week, he put his Instagram post back up.
Yeah,
he's another one of these guys. Just real quick on him, like, I'm gonna lose interest in Kyler Murray real fast if he pulls
Very
shit like
quickly.
this.
Yep.
So he's a likable
I already
guy.
am.
Then he's he gaffes in the playoffs. He's apparently got a bad attitude according to some people. I likes to throw the blame around. I'm gonna lose interest in him real quick, and I'm already starting to.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the whole Instagram shit that people do. Like, oh, like he unfollowed this person. Oh, he took this team out of his bio.
It's good for content.
It's just
That's about
like,
it.
It's good for content and good for people who are really fucking bored. But I just do not care.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, how bored are you? How bored are you if this is a huge subject in your life? Please get a hobby, fly a kite or something.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Lockett. Who knows what else Seattle wants to do and tearing things down. I'm okay with it. I'm not in love with it. It's the age.
It's a hefty.
It's the age.
Oh, see, it's the
money.
money.
Just the age more so than the money. If you can make the money work, it's fine. But I don't really like the idea of adding any player as they approach 32, 33. I love Tyler Lockett, but I'm not going to be one of those people that is clamoring for him. It's another guy that falls into the luxury category. If they can make it work, great. But if they can't, I'm really not going to lose sleep. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I love the player. I love Tyler Lockett, always have. But again, it's a combination of both for me. It's $23.95 million owed for the last 2 seasons of his deal, 2024, 2025. Like you said, those last 2 years, he's 32 and 33. Like, the receivers break down even before their 30s. Like, it's too hefty of an asking price to deal with stuff like that. It's not going to happen, but I might call up Seattle and just say, hey, what could we get for DK, or what would you want for DK Metcalf if they're going to start selling off pieces? I can't imagine he's going to want to be there. But
yeah, that's another thing that nobody's really talking about. Yeah, I mean, DK would cost a lot. I think DK costs you pick 21, definitely.
Yeah, it's a first round pick and a lot more.
But man, like, DK would be perfect. It would satisfy the people that wanted him over N'Keal Harry, even though they were drafted like 30 something picks apart. That would be something, but I don't see it happening. I could see DK getting frustrated during the season, though. If
100%. He got frustrated last year.
NFL players love. Yeah, NFL players love those cryptic tweets. He could, maybe throw off some cryptic tweets or whatever. The biggest news coming in the form of 2 quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers having the spotlight eventually stolen from him, which is great.
That was awesome. Good for Russell Wilson.
Reportedly signing a 4-year, $200 million contract, giving him $153 million guaranteed until he's 42, which is very dumb. I don't care how good he is. Like, you got to win multiple Super Bowls in the next 4 years to justify $153 million.
And he's not going to.
And he won't, because he's Aaron Rodgers. It just won't happen. He'll maybe win one. Maybe. Just go sicko mode. It's certainly possible. But it got overshadowed by the Russell Wilson trade, which is great.
Real quick on the Rodgers stuff, I was just going to say, I'm going to guess real quick, those 4 years, you'll get about 2 NFC Championship appearances, both losses, 1 divisional round loss, and 1 wildcard round loss. He won't sniff a Super Bowl, if you ask me, because it's just the player that he is. And I don't know if you saw it, I like how, too, after it came out, he had the tweet out, or was like, there's a lot of conflicting reports that I've officially signed. I haven't officially signed anything.
Yeah, because he wants to announce it and take he has to announce. He wants to get the spotlight. He's like, hey guys, I'm saying it, no one else. Even though he's very good friends with Pat McAvoy and he knows Ian Rappaport. Like he's the worst. He's the worst. He's the LeBron James of the NFL. He's the fucking worst. I hate this guy so much. I feel bad for Bears fans too. They're probably like, yes, Aaron Rodgers is finally gone.
Yeah, I know,
he's gonna
right?
go somewhere else, and he just doesn't. I'll say this though, I do think an NFC Championship is possible in a Super Bowl appearance because of Brady being gone. I think in the right year they could beat the Rams. Maybe not. We'll see. The Cardinals could establish themselves as a firm contender. Cowboys. I think it's possible. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is really going to slow down. I think he's probably got at least 2 of those years where he's going to be elite. Then maybe like drop off a little bit and then maybe a little bit more into the 42 season. I don't think he's ever going to be garbage. He's just he's too good. I hate the guy, but he's too good. He's he's too dialed in of a quarterback, when he gets going. It's hard to get him out of his zone.
Mhm.
Russell Wilson. I mean, this trade sort of came out of nowhere. We had the rumblings over the past like half year or so
Yep.
that he might end up somewhere else for this upcoming season. Then it just all happened at once. We didn't get the details all right away, but we know the details now. Denver acquired Wilson at a 2022 fourth-round pick for QB Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, which I didn't expect him to be moved. I honestly kind of thought that the Seahawks were somehow going to end up trying snag one of the receivers like Cortland Sutton or
that would have
Tim
made more
Patrick,
sense.
who just signed big time deals. So that's kind of the reason why I was a little hesitant on it, because they just signed Jerry Jeudy. Was possible, but more likely than not, they're not going to move Jerry Jeudy.
Mhm.
But if they were to go for a big guy, they could ask Patrick Surtain. Probably not. They just drafted him, but I'm kind of surprised that I really thought they could have pulled off Bradley Chubb in this deal. Maybe take one piece out, get Bradley Chubb, but it's more unrealistic than it is realistic. But
Mhm.
the thing is, the verbiage of the biggest trade in history. I was like, oh my god, there's going to be like a massive player involved in this deal, isn't there? And I thought that could have been Bradley Chubb. Like Shelby Harris is pretty good. Like you texted me about him. He's pretty solid. Like some people talked him up pretty highly. He's like a pretty good edge rusher. I wouldn't say he's elite, but pretty good player. Noah Fant, I don't know how he's going to do in Seattle, but he's shown flashes. I think he's going to be solid.
Yeah.
Drew Lock is ass, and he's going to be even worse. He's going to be even worse in Seattle because he had good receivers in Denver. You could make the case that DK and Lockett are fine, but he doesn't have as good of an offensive line. He doesn't have a running game to work with besides Rashad Penny, who's not a surefire number one yet. He might be getting there. When you had Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, but yeah, that's something we'll have to wait and see on. He might not even be the day one starter. Pick 9 overall, the biggest piece in the trade. Huge for Seattle. They did trade what ended up being the 10th overall pick in the Jamal Adams trade, so they essentially jumped one pick up with a separate trade. The Jets now have that pick, of course. A 2023 first, pick number 40, a 2023 second, and a 2022 fifth-round pick. One of the biggest trades in NFL history. The Seahawks had such a dumb tweet, with the whole Wilson tweet, and then the Broncos had the good one with the the volleyball.
The Wilson, I saw that. Like it's
Wilson
awesome.
on it. Yeah. God, I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I think of it.
I have not either.
Great. It makes you think now. In a conference that already had a lot of good QBs, I'm just gonna throw this question right out there. How big of a contender are the Denver Broncos?
Huge. I think that I've kind of alluded to it earlier. I've said it a couple of times. I think the third best team in the conference right now, behind Kansas City and Buffalo. I think they're better than Cincinnati. They're definitely better than the Patriots. They're better than who else were playoff teams last year. Pittsburgh's kind of the same boat as Denver was. They need a quarterback and they'll be all set. Like I was saying that from day one. I thought if Rodgers was going anyway, it was going to be the Denver and then go, because Denver would have been a Super Bowl favorite at that point. But yeah, they're top 3 team in the AFC right now. They are going to be a definite problem because their defense was good last year. You mentioned all the weapons they have on offense. Curious to see what they do now at tight end, because Fant was a decent part of that offense. But with a healthy Russell Wilson, like let's just look out. Like they're going to be a very good team.
Speaking of the Steelers, real quick, I'm going to throw out a bold thing that I think could happen, not an outright prediction. The Steelers loved Malik Willis at the Senior Bowl. I think there's a legit chance the Steelers try to get into the top 10 and take him. I think their best case scenario, which I don't think will happen because I don't think he's available for a rookie QB to start day one, is Kenny Pickett. I think he's the Mac Jones, not stylistically or anything, but the most pro-ready guy of any QB in the draft this year. I think that's their best case scenario. Keep the Pitt kid who played at the University of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I think Kenny Pickett, I have him in mind going 9th to the Seahawks. I think he's their best bet to, if they want to rebuild on the fly, he's a guy that I think could be a solid NFL QB year one. I think Matt Corral is going to need a year to get ready. I think Malik Willis needs a year, maybe 2 to get ready. Probably not 2, but I think, He's going to have to adapt to a very big jump in competition because Liberty didn't play the best competition, and work on some things. But the kid's got the arm strength, he's got the mobility. He could only need a year. But Matt Corral, already mentioned him. I think I'm jumping all over myself here. Desmond Ridder, probably a guy that takes a year, maybe a guy that could be like a late season starter. But the Steelers have options. Sam Howell could work as well, a guy that I think could establish himself in his first year in the league. But I think their most ideal guy at QB there is Kenny Pickett. Don't think he'll be there, though. But yeah, for me, Denver, I don't know if I'll put them over the Bengals, but partially,
I'm just Super Bowl fatigue is going to get Cincinnati this year.
I don't think so.
No.
I think there's a very good chance the Bengals end up with J.C. Jackson. So
that'd be an awesome move for them.
I
still
think
need an offensive line though. Like that's what
I think they need J.C. Jackson so badly. An upgrade from Eli Apple to J.C. Jackson would be the biggest upgrade at any position, probably in the league, besides Russell Wilson for Drew Lock. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say it yet because I want to see what the Bengals do, but I think, they're right in the top 4 area of teams in the AFC for sure. But we'll see how it works. We'll see. What?
I said you stole Matt's question.
What do you mean I stole Matt's question?
Look at the chat.
Yeah, I was answering his question.
Oh, well, no, he meant like he worded the way he worded it, and then you asked pretty much the same question.
Yeah, that's why I brought this up because he put it in the chat.
He doesn't seem happy that you just questioned, so we may need to have a discussion with him afterwards.
We're obviously going to talk about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I segued into this so we could answer his question.
Perfect.
Yeah, but Denver's going to be pretty good. We'll see how Russell Wilson does in the new system. Kanye West and AB next in Denver. Apparently, they're very, very serious about buying the Broncos.
Oh, God. Good luck to that team.
The obvious here. The Broncos will never sell their team to a rapper and a complete dumbass
psychotic
receiver.
Former NFL player.
Like I've listened to him speak on the whole situation. He's a guy that he does have a decent head on his shoulders. He knows like who he is. He knows the consequences, but he just doesn't make good decisions in the moment. That's his problem. But you can definitely say he's at least partially dumb as well.
You could say that about both those guys.
I mean, Kanye West is a whole different animal. I don't really want to talk about him, but I figured we would just bring it up real quick.
We're not a music show. We don't,
Yeah, that guy is completely tapped. He's a guy that I don't think he understands, the consequences of his actions, like Antonio Brown might after the fact. Because he just goes unhinged on social media and his songs sometimes. He's just so goddamn dumb. Maybe he'll make a run at president too, like he tried to.
God, don't do that.
The guy's just a meme. He's just a meme. He really is. Then Carson Wentz traded to the Washington Commanders today. Almost said Washington football team. The Colts get a 2022 third, a 2023 third. That could become a second if Carson Wentz plays 70% of offensive snaps.
I think it was 75 I saw too.
Second
I forgot to change that.
Carson Wentz in a 2022 second. Whatever.
That's basically the same trade that Philly made with them. So it's like, it's cool. Not a big
it really is.
Good luck, Washington.
Speaking of QBs, the QB that's in the hottest water, I should say, English. Deshaun Watson. We don't know what his legal future is. It sounds like things are going to progress in some way.
Friday apparently is going to be the day
at the end of the week. So we'll see how that happens. Not a legal guy. Not going to give you all the details here.
Nope, not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
I'll say this, though. It's a really interesting spot for him to land in Carolina because Christian McCaffrey's name has reportedly been out there to some extent. If I'm Houston, I will absolutely take Christian McCaffrey. I think 3 first-round picks also looks great. But if you get like Christian McCaffrey and 2 first-round picks and like a 3rd-round pick or something, that looks pretty good as well. I think
it's not bad.
You have to, if you can get Christian McCaffrey, take the bet on having a guy that can be the best running back in the league if he stays healthy. And he probably is the best running back in the league. I think Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry are challenging him for that now.
Mhm.
But when he's on the top of his game, he's easily top 2.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Is it him in 3 firsts, him in 2 firsts, him 2 firsts and a third? Like I said, the Panthers have the 6th overall pick this year, so I imagine that will be involved. That's a major asset, so that
Yep.
could be a leveraging point for them to give up less outside of that asset. Houston would then have 2 top 6 picks, 3rd and 6th overall, so that'd be pretty major for them in their rebuild. I think this is obvious. If things get settled to the point where Carolina is willing to give you that pick, Christian McCaffrey, and a combination of other assets, you have to do it.
I think you have to do it. Absolutely.
Deshaun Watson doesn't want to play for you. I don't think you can justify if Deshaun Watson were to have a change of heart, just letting him back into your good graces because it's a bad look, and the fans are
absolutely not.
Some fans probably still love the guy, but it's not a great look for your organization. You got to just get the assets for him because you don't want that awkwardness around the organization. Start fresh.
Yep.
Get some guys. You're already moving on from Laramie Tunsil. It sounds like add in the draft as well with that other pick, an offensive lineman if you can, and then protect who the quarterback of the future is, whether it's Davis Mills or someone down the road. Right now, it looks like Davis Mills. Speaking of quarterbacks, Mitch Trubisky might end up with the Giants, which would be very funny because
hilarious.
I think watching Mitch Trubisky get like $10 million he could supposedly get to potentially be a backup. I love Mitch Trubisky. I honestly hope he starts over Daniel Jones just because,
how do you go
there are a lot of funny
quarterback
jokes made
to
about
him,
Mitch Trubisky.
Like,
And listening to Big Cat talk about Mitch Trubisky on the Giants every week would be really funny. Pardon my take is something I listen to every episode every week, so that would be very good entertainment for me personally. But yeah, I mean, it would just be one of those signings that makes you laugh a little bit. I think Mitch Trubisky could be decent.
I don't think
Decent.
we're going to
Nothing
differ
more.
on another quarterback here because, like I said, I feel Washington fans having to go from
Like
Tyler
I'm
Heineke
saying,
to
like I'm
Carson
saying,
Wentz, like Giants fans to go from Daniel Jones to
I'm
Mitch
saying like
Trubisky,
20 to
good
22
luck.
range.
Mm,
I'm saying like 20 to 22 range QB at best. That's it. I'm not talking top 20 or top 15. I'm saying like the better of the bad QBs. That's what I'll say.
I guess.
Mitch
Yeah.
Trubisky is a content gem. He's like the new
True.
Blake Bortles,
Yeah.
pretty much, just a little bit better. Blake Bortles, Adam Schefter, speaking of pardon my take, didn't rule out Blake Bortles landing another contract. His career's not over. The boat legacy lives on. I'm just giving shameless plugs to pardon my take right now. But we're talking about football, so it makes sense. Onto franchise tags. Chris Godwin tagged for the second time. Cam Robinson tagged for the second time. Devontae Adams, Dalton Schultz, Orlando Brown, Jesse Bates, David Njoku, weird one. Don't think that David Njoku is very good. Mike Gesicki, all franchise tagged. Any surprises here for you? Anything else on franchise tags you want to bring up while we're talking about it?
Not really. I mean, I think it was kind of the writing was on the wall with Devontae Adams getting franchise tag. I feel like as soon as you obviously knew that Rodgers was coming back, Chris Godwin, not surprised there, coming off of his injury. I think that's probably the smart move. They're not going to give him a big money deal right out of the gate. And Njoku's a little surprising. Like, I don't know what.
I just don't think David Njoku is very good.
No, I mean,
he's all right, but he just hasn't proved himself. He hasn't proved himself enough to get a franchise tag.
Yeah. The one real quick thing too, I apologize for keep backtracking on stuff, but everyone's been talking about now with the trade of Wilson to Denver, having that division of Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, and Wilson in the AFC West being maybe the best division in football when it comes to that. If Trubisky goes to the Giants, I feel like you're looking at like the anti-AFC West there. You have a division that consists of now potentially Trubisky, Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts, and Dak Prescott's the one real star in that division. So that was the one kind of I just wanted to randomly bring up. I thought it was kind of interesting. That'll be looked at. Is that back on the franchise tag thing, but nothing too crazy. I was a little surprised Mike Williams re-signed. I thought maybe he was going to end up somewhere else on the Chargers, but nothing too crazy on that end.
Yeah, and sorry to anybody who might be getting frustrated of us talking over to each other. Ryan is coming in a little delayed on my end, so I think that's contributing to it a little bit. It's just your voice, it's kind of weird. It's not like the way you think of it, but it's a little bit delayed.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the scratchiness is coming in. Maybe something's up with your internet.
I don't know. Yeah,
I hear it on my end. Matt can hear it. I texted Matt. I don't
Oh,
know. We
did he?
can
That's
probably
weird.
fix it by next week. Maybe it's just a one-time thing. But apologies, for anything like that. But just want people to know we're mindful of stuff like that.
Hmm.
Mike Williams signs for 3 years, 60 million, 40 million guaranteed, well deserved. I think, that's a little bit much for Mike Williams. I kind of expect him to be like a 3 by 50, 4 by 60 type of guy. 4 by 64 maybe, but 3 by 60 isn't a huge overpayment. He bounced back in a big way this year. I think Mike Williams is fine. I think that's fine money. I think, this is a guy that could continue to go upwards in his career. Still fairly young, good player. We've seen him do some pretty big things. Good contract. Harold Landry, for a half second, I was hoping he would hit free agency, but they didn't tag him, and the Patriots could somehow shell out the money to get him, make enough room. But no, we can't get a BC Eagle on the Patriots, a
Can't have
top flight
nice
Eagle.
things.
One of the better Eagles I've ever seen play in my lifetime. Harold Landry is so, so good, and he was so, so good in the late season in the playoffs. I just love him. I think he'd be an absolutely perfect Patriots linebacker, but a former Patriot gets a hold on to him in Mike Vrabel. Huge, huge piece of business for the Titans, a guy that I think is on his way to becoming a top 10, if not already a top 10 linebacker in the league, maybe top 5. I think he's that good. I think he can become that good. Bobby Wagner, speaking of linebackers, released by Seattle. Matt Judon is recruiting him already, saying, "Hey, big head," in all caps with a smirking emoji. Don't know what their relationship is, how exactly they know each other. Could be just from playing against each other. Could be something, friends through friends or whatever. But
Off-season
please,
workouts, something like
please,
that.
Matthew Judon. Bobby Wagner is immediately at the top of my list for defensive
Hmm.
upgrades. I don't think he's gonna make anywhere. Well, maybe not anywhere close, but he could make like half of that 20 million, maybe less than that. He's an older guy. I think it's really hard to tell, but I think the Patriots can make it work no matter what the dollar amount is if they like him enough. I think Bobby Wagner would be incredible here. One of the better linebackers the league has seen in the past decade or so. An absolute beast, and a guy that is getting older but still very capable. A guy I think's probably got 2 or 3 years left in him if he decides to go that far. Other linebackers we talked about: Leighton Vander Esch, Jordan Hicks, AJ Klein, other options for the Patriots that they could look at. But we'll see. There are other options as well. It's another position. I'm not just going to go through every position like I did with corners. Just did corners because we're losing a major corner most likely.
Hmm.
How do you feel about the linebacker group? Are there any of these guys? Is Wagner the main guy for you, or do you want to go with a potentially cheaper, more long-term option in Vander Esch? Do you like AJ Klein? Do you like Jordan Hicks? Do you like someone else? Where do you stand on the linebacker position?
I'll take either one of these two, Wagner or Vander Esch. Obviously, like you said, Vander Esch is, I think, younger, like you mentioned, so maybe that's the route they want to go. But I think you might, maybe Wagner's a guy you can get on a cheaper deal, like you said, he is older, and then you draft a guy, bring him in to kind of groom him. But I don't know. I mean, it all goes back to kind of like we talked about way back earlier, is what the Page approach is. Like, if they approach a guy like Wagner and want to try to lowball him because they think his market might not be there and kind of miss out on that, like, that's a direction I could see them going, and maybe a mistake they make on a couple of these guys, but we'll have to wait and
Yeah.
see, of course. But, I mean, like I said, I'm fine with any of these guys if they can get them at a solid price that works for them.
Yeah, I think Klein and Hicks too. Just more on them are the more affordable options. I think AJ
Mhm.
Klein made like $5 million with the Bills, so maybe you can get him for around that dollar. I think Jordan Hicks made $6 million. I saw somewhere. Don't know if that's exactly right. I could be reading something wrong. But options I think we could very well see being Patriots. I just want one of these guys, if not two,
Yeah.
if they really
Yep.
want to splurge. But I think the plan at linebacker too is to get Josh Uche involved. Maybe Anthony Jennings sticks on the roster and they try to finally get him involved. He missed all last year with an injury. Ronnie Perkins, Cameron McGrone as well. We have the draft. We'll see what the linebacker position looks like because it could look quite a bit different. Probably will. It's already starting to take shape or lose shape with free agents
Rather, yeah.
and cutting Kyle Van Noy. Last update. Unfortunately, we got more bad things happening to Brian Flores. The latest on him today. is him accusing the Dolphins of trying to force his racial discrimination against him into secret arbitration. Like you're denying the allegations if you're Stephen Ross, and then you're supposedly trying to put it into secret arbitration. I don't think Brian Flores
Sweep it
would
under the rug. Yeah.
tell fibs twice.
No,
I don't think he'd be telling
absolutely
fibs
not.
twice. I think at the time I put like a 5% odds on, Stephen Ross telling the truth because innocent until proven guilty, but more so the 95% leaning towards Flores.
Yep.
His lawyer wants Goodell to avoid hypocrisy, keep the case out of secret arbitration. Can't blame him. I just wish, as our kind of a annoying last football point, I just wish this didn't have to happen to a guy that I think is a great NFL mind. I'm glad he's found a job with the Steelers. I hate the Steelers,
absolutely.
But my God, can Brian Flores just get this? For their sake, Brian Flores and his team find a peaceful resolution here. Just get this over with. I'm not saying that because I don't want to hear the story anymore. I don't want to hear the story anymore from his perspective, but I just want the guy to, have a normal life.
Have some sort of peace when it comes to this.
What he deserves. The closure he needs, whatever. Any peace, closure, peace, whatever. Just let the guy live in peace, for Christ's sake.
I think the big thing, too, I'm with you. I'm glad he has a job. I'm glad Pittsburgh went out there and offered him and gave a job. But again, I still think the guy's a more than qualified head coach in the NFL. That's where he should be. He shouldn't have to take a defensive coordinator job or a lesser job like that. So hopefully, I don't know how long he signed on for Pittsburgh, but if this gets cleared up, if this is something that's keeping teams away from hiring him, which is a joke in itself, then maybe if all this stuff gets cleared up down the road, he can get another head coach job, because that's where he should be. You mentioned he's one of the best football minds, it seems like, in the league. The guy should get the head position, not having to settle for a defensive coordinator, like I said, some other sort of coaching position.
Yeah, I agree. But we just wanted to touch on that quickly because I feel like nobody really picked that up in the big media outlets. Maybe I just didn't look close enough.
I didn't even know
I saw
about
one
it,
tweet
to
about
be
it
honest.
from Amy Dash, who's a legal reporter and writer, but nothing else besides that. I don't think I saw Schefter or anybody pick that up. But that's it for football. A huge past week. We did some looking ahead as well. It's going to be crazy. This offseason is going to be awesome. Just get me to March 16th, then get me to the draft. I want the fun to really get cooking here a little more and take the next step, because the offseason is a lot of fun for guys like us. On to the Bruins, though. The Bruins have had some exciting moments, but it's not going to compare to the excitement of what's going on in the NFL. The Bruins, I'm still in a good spot of where I'm at with the Bruins. We'll talk about some trade deadline stuff after we go through our spiel of the weeks, the past week of games and stuff. Starting with the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas, they beat them 5-2. Craig Smith scores the first 3 Bruins goals of the game. First 2 Bruins goals of the game. Pastrnak had the third. Jack Eichel gets on the board, kind of unintentionally fakes out Jeremy Swayman, buries one. He almost pulled like a Kucherov, but I think he did it by accident. He'll take it, though. He's having a good start to his time in Vegas. David Pastrnak scores. Frederick and Howley get involved in that one. Don't see Trent Frederick setting up David Pastrnak too much. First 3-point game of his career. Speaking of Trent Frederick, he continues to find his niche on the third line, which is awesome. We'll have plenty to talk about with him. Pastrnak just pots a couple more. Guy stays hot. He's got the most goals in the league as of last week since January 1st. If he did this all season, he'd easily be at 40, maybe ahead of or just around Austin Matthews' 43 for the league lead. Austin Matthews, one of the Hart Trophy favorites, sadly. The guy has really upgraded his defensive game, and he's playing out of his mind. If Igor Shesterkin wasn't having one of the best seasons by a goalie ever, I think Austin Matthews would be the clear-cut Hart favorite. Jonathan March still has one late. David Pastrnak has an empty netter. No big deal. Jeremy Swayman makes 34 saves and 36 shots. Pretty good win for the Bruins, I'd say.
I would say so.
And for Craig Smith, holy smokes.
Yeah, huge game. Absolute huge game for him. This was, just real quick, one of the games that when we did the previews a couple weeks ago that I kind of said I was a little worried about, because you're obviously getting towards the end of a lengthy road trip. You don't want to have a game where they slip up or, have a downer performance. I thought this might be one of those games, but they, for the most part, I caught the end of it coming home from work. For the most part, played really well for what it sounded like all throughout.
Yeah, they did overall. Nothing
Mhm.
really to harp on here. Next up is Columbus. We got the first game in a trend that I'm not really loving for the Bruins.
I was going to ask that if you're a little worried these last couple games.
Yeah, I just realized you didn't remind me.
The
I
Bruins
gotta
change thing,
change
I'm
the
sorry.
thing. I gotta change the thing. My OCD
I know
is going
people are
through the
sitting on
roof.
pins and needles
Yeah,
waiting for that to.
direct all complaints to at
Yep.
Ryan_Salvaggio on Twitter. Not me. But man, this was not the greatest ending to a game, even though they did win in the shootout. Jake DeBrusk gets the scoring started, his 15th of the year. Didn't think I'd be saying that this year for Jake DeBrusk.
That's for sure.
To be honest with you, am I right? Am I right?
I would say so.
Jeremy Swayman, not his best night in net. Not like a catastrophe though. I don't think he's tremendously to blame for these goals he's let up. But I mean, the Nyquist goal, he did dupe Swayman. He brought it out a little wider and held on to it a little longer than Swayman expected, and Nyquist buried it. A rebound sneaks past Brandon Carlo. Not a great look. Jeremy Swayman, understandably, would have had to make a miraculous effort to make the save. Can't recover in time. Vladislav Gavrikov buries one. Eric Howell stays hot with his 8th of the season. Zach Werenski, not going to blame Swayman really for this one. Just sent a bullet, a puck with eyes, past Jeremy Swayman and in on the glove side. Craig Smith, 4 goals in 2 games, adds 1 for the Bruins. Bergeron cleans up a rebound after some tic-tac-toe hockey from Marchand, Pastrnak, and Hall. And this is where things got annoying.
Come off the rails.
Nick Foligno helps out his old team, takes a penalty late in the game. Voracek hammers one through Bergeron. Bergeron almost blocked it. Really close, almost got there. It passed Swayman with, I got to double check, 3 seconds left. Unfortunate, but they make it through overtime, and Pastrnak ends it in the shootout. They would have got the loser point, but good to get 2 here, especially for a team that, for the Bruins, it's not a tremendous concern, but a team in Columbus that is slowly creeping up on the Washington Capitals for that second wildcard spot. Going to be very tough for them to do so. Still a long ways to go, but they are making headway. Patrick Laine is playing like one of the best players in the league over the past month or so, playing out of his mind. Things are working for them, and I don't think it's going to affect the Bruins unless the Bruins start to slip, but Columbus is a team to monitor. But man, that'd be something if Obi, at this point in his career, slips out of the playoffs. Don't think he'd be too happy. Did you catch this game? Did you catch the ending? Do you have anything to add on that?
I did. This is the only thing I was going to say. The only thing I was going to say about this is the game that I thought the Vegas one might be. Again, towards the end of our long road trip, sloppy play. You saw that multiple times in this game, and like you mentioned, giving up a goal with 3 seconds left of a dumb penalty is obviously not what you want to have happen. Like you said, though, good that they were able to get 2 points out of it with the shootout win. Again, though, I know they got a win. I know Pastrnak scored in the shootout, but Coyle and Brusque in the shootout when you have a healthy Bergeron and Marchand, is that
they like Charlie
it all
Coyle?
to you?
I mean,
Right.
Coyle and DeBrusk have done good in the shootout in the past. I think they have certain niche guys for the shootout. I think part of the reason they even acquired Andre Kasha in the past because they knew he was good in the shootout. Because they were so bad in shootouts. Kasha maybe got like 1 or 2 opportunities, I think, with the Bruins in the shootout. But that guy can legit score in the shootout. Got some crazy hands when he's got all the time in the world. But yeah, tough loss, or tough almost loss. I was thinking ahead to the LA game. LA gets their revenge. Trent Frederick scores. He's just sitting there all out in front of the net. Charlie Coyle sauces a biscuit over to him. Whole line gets involved in that goal. That third line, Frederick, Coyle, and Smith is great. 9 seconds later, though, Blake Lizotte scores a net front goal, little greasy goal. You don't hold the lead, then Craig Smith scores. You hold the lead going into the third. Trevor Moore scores late in the third. to tie it up and send it to OT. Another collapse by the Bruins. Not quite the collapse, like an overwhelming like onslaught, quite like the Blue Jackets had to lead to that goal. By the way, Sean Corrali assisted that game timing game tying goal. Payne guy just hit his career high in goals the other night. Two points away from his career high in points. King, as John Boudreaux called him, Mr. Handsome, face of the NHL. No big deal. No, I didn't call him face of the NHL. I'm just saying that jokingly because I love Corrali. Anybody who listens
That had
to
to
that
be
show knows
mixed
this.
emotions for you.
Then Charlie Coyle on a great night. Yeah, it was. I miss him so much. Someone tweeted at me today too when I retweeted Bucci's thing that they missed Corrali and Achari. Me too, dude. I really do. They were so much fun to watch, but you can't lock up every lovable fourth liner. That's just not how the league works. Happy to see him doing well. He's the man. I love Sean Corrali. I can say safely, I was one of the only people in Boston wearing a Sean Corrali jersey out to a bar that night. Rockland, Massachusetts, got to witness it in all its glory at Players Bar and Grill. I was wearing it proud. Love Corrali. Andre Athanasiou spoils Charlie Coyle's. Wonderful night when Charlie Coyle's spinorama sets him up with another biscuit, like he did to Trent Frederick. Athanasiou, guy with speed, uses it, buries it. Linus Olmark's not in his line. He's got to make that save. He's got to be on his line. I'm putting that one on him. I'm putting that one on Coyle. A tough way to end it. It really is. And it's just another one in a trend of games where they kind of lose it at the end. And we see this happen every once in a while with the Bruins, but this year it hasn't really been a consistent thing. To me, I'm not really worried about it. It's something I'll keep in the back of my mind. I'll remember games like this, but not something I'm like super panicked about. I don't know where you're at on it though.
I don't know. These last couple of games, I mean, if anybody that's listening to this, whenever we're ever going to get into it when it comes to trade deadline stuff, I'm assuming you're just like target stuff like that, maybe that you have in a second or what, they could go after. These last two nights, or last two games rather, have kind of shifted my focus of what I think this team might need at the deadline. Like I said, if anybody had listened before, I thought they were more so need, and I've always said this when it comes to the Bruins and the playoffs are around the corner, you need scoring. You can never have that much or too much scoring because as we've seen with this team in the past, some guys, some lines disappear when it comes to playoffs. If they're going to have performances like this, though, I think you have to go find another top defenseman that you can pair with McAvoy. Because I missed this game. It was funny, actually, as you brought the point that you brought that, it's a trend we've seen before with the Bruins. My friend Colby working the night of this game, I came inside. And what's more Bruins like? Them giving up a goal with 30 seconds after them losing in overtime. Like, it's the perfect way to describe the Bruins team when it comes to stuff like this. But, yeah, I just think that Felger and Maz were talking about today was the four boards. A guy that's been out on the ice in a couple of these collapses late. Like it's a clear indication to me that you need to find another top that you can pair with McAvoy because they're up to point too that they're playing McAvoy a lot obviously and they should be because he's a top defenseman, one of the best in the league. But are they starting to maybe run him a little dry when it comes to having him out there so much? And is that going to hurt down the line?
I really think they are. Just another note here, real quick. Swayman makes Olmark. I'm thinking Swayman because he's just playing better. Olmark makes 25 saves and 28 shots. Kind of acknowledged that, him and Swayman are very good friends. He kind of acknowledged that he knows Swayman's playing pretty well and is kind of taking the starting job. And as expected, because these guys love each other. Like, seriously, like with the hugs and everything, the Instagram pictures and shit. These guys are best friends. Like, Linus Olmark, it seems on the surface, does not care. I think he's happy for his boy. But it's cool to see, Olmark not kind of shy away from that. He's like, yeah, like I can still come here with a smile on my face, talking about how he's just happy for Swayman. Kind of like a cliche answer, but it's good to see, Olmark not really looking discouraged because I think, if this keeps going in a first round series, you're probably looking at Swayman getting in a 7-game series, like 5 of the games. Maybe Olmark gets 1 or 2 per series. That's how I would do it. Maybe, they run Swayman the whole playoffs. I don't really think that's great. I do not like that. I think you got to give Olmark at least minimum a game to give Swayman some time off. I don't think you want to run Swayman into the ground the first year. I think he's a guy that, if he struggles, they have a first-round exit. I don't think it'll kill his confidence permanently, but
Hmm.
until he's like more established in the league, I don't think you want to lean on a rookie for a potential very long playoff run every single game. I don't think that's smart. I don't think it's I think it can kind of wear on a goalie mentally. Not like
Hmm.
long term, but in the moment and cause them to slip up when it means the most. You signed Omar for $5 million. You got to play him a little bit in the playoffs. Maybe they split time if Swayman can't keep up this torrid pace, which is certainly possible. He can play pretty good the rest of the season, but this pace is like he's the best goalie in the league right now, besides Igor Shesterkin, with how good he's been playing. Um, it's not sustainable all year unless he just goes like Tim Thomas. It's not sustainable for like any goalie. It's very, very hard to sustain. So that's just my thoughts on Swayman going forward. They paid Omar $5 million. They're gonna play him a little bit in the playoffs, and of course they're gonna keep him in the mix going forward the rest of the season. Game previews tomorrow night. They have Chicago at home. Chicago's 21, 29, and 8, seventh in the Central. Patrick Kane still looking like close to prime Patrick Kane, 64 points, 54 games. Marc-Andre Fleury, a guy probably on the move at the deadline, even though he wants to reportedly stay in Chicago for whatever reason. 18, 20, and 4, just playing with a terrible defense in front of him. 2.92 goals against, 908 save percentage, 4 shutouts. Pretty remarkable that his numbers are that good given where he started. He had a terrible start to the year, getting acclimated with that terrible defense. Big step down from Vegas's defense. Kevin Lankinen, he's also played a lot of games too. You look at Lankinen, he's made 15 appearances when Fleury's made 42. Part of that is because Lankinen was hurt for a good chunk of the season, but he's 3-6-4 with a 357 and an 885. So yeah, guy had a pretty good rookie season last year, hasn't lived up to the hype in his second year, definitely dealing with a sophomore slump. But the Blackhawks are interesting right now. They're not like tearing it up, but they're coming off an 8-3 win over the Ducks last night. Dylan Strome's playing high in the lineup consistently. He's found a good spot there. I don't think he's the guy the Bruins could trade for DeBrusk anymore. I think the Blackhawks are going to want to hold on to him because he's up to 30 points on the season, and he's playing pretty good in that top 6. I think he's playing with Kane and DeBrincat maybe Kubalik a little. Playing very good, had a hat trick and an assist last night. Patrick Kane had 6 points last night. He has 11 in his last 4 games. Strome has 9 points in his last 4 games. They're both playing out of their tree right now. Pretty remarkable. Jeremy Swayman starts tomorrow night. Speaking of Jeremy Swayman, David Pagnotta from Twitter at the 4th period said, "What do Igor Shesterkin, Jeremy Swayman, Freddie Anderson, Jacob Markstrom, and Ville Husso all have in common? They're all top 5 in the NHL in both goals against and save percentage." For Husso and Swayman, their numbers mean a little bit less because they haven't played as much, not to take anything away from them, but Shesterkin, Anderson, and Markstrom have all played more games than them. But still, they're an elite company. Those guys are 3 of the best goalies in the league. Could very well be the top 3 finalists for the Vezina, and Swayman and Husso are right up there. Ville Husso, the much better goalie in St. Louis than that dumb, racist, misogynist scumbag fraud loser Carson Wentz, the NHL, Jordan Binnington, Nick Foles. I'm thinking of
Nick Foles. Yeah,
QBs. We were talking about Carson Wentz earlier.
Did admit Carson Wentz
the Nick
sucks.
Foles, the NHL. He is such a loser. He sucks.
Win for me.
He sucks. The Blues are stuck with him for the next 5 years. He sucks. They deserve it. He deserves it. I hope he has a terrible carear. I dislike him strongly.
Clearly, yeah.
Saturday night, the surging Arizona Coyotes on Saturday night. 17, 35, and 4 now. 38 points. Hot. Last in the Central. Clayton Keller, 54 points in 56 games. Pretty remarkable on that team. Nick Ritchie's kind of buzzing a little bit down there. He's looking pretty comfortable. Scott Wedgwood in net, 8, 11, and 2, 314, and a 909. Carl Vejmelka, a guy who could be on the move maybe for a team looking for goaltending help. They could sell high on him. He has 921-1, but that's why because he's on Arizona. His numbers have fallen off a little bit since the last time we talked about him. He's at 338 for goals against right now, 904 and 1 shutout. Pretty remarkable that he even has a shutout on that team. The Coyotes are buzzing right now, though. They're making NHL history. They've scored 17 goals in their last 2 games.
They
They've
get
won
those right
6
where
of
they
their
want
last
them.
10, 3 straight, right where they want them. They're going to
I
pull
smell a
a
comeback.
2019 Blues.
Yeah.
They're going to pull 2019 Blues and make the playoffs, even though they're a little late. The Blues started that in January. The
How many
Coyotes
games
starting it in
are
March.
left? You just got to go, what,
They have
30-ish and whatever to
they
maybe
got to
sneak
win
into the
like
playoffs?
25, 26 their 29 games.
There you go. There's the number.
Possible.
25 and 4. 20.
Hey, don't rule them out.
Yeah. Yep. Never
Don't
say
rule
never.
them out. Another
At
guy
this
that's been
pace.
hot, like we're talking about with the Blackhawks, Nick Schmaltz. He got hit a really tough start to the season production-wise, dealt with an injury as well. Has 21 points in his last 10 games. That's pretty insane.
Where was his production all season?
Well, he was injured and he struggled to
No,
start
I'm
the
just
season.
in
They were
general
playing
with
worse.
the team.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they'd be playing a little better. Probably wouldn't be in a playoff spot, but maybe
Yeah.
they'd be ahead of
Still.
the Blackhawks in that division. But they're in the race for Shane Wright or Logan Cooley at the top of the draft this year. The most points in a single game were his 7 the other night against the Senators. The most in Sam Gagner had 8 in one game on 2-12-12. 2-12-12 is the same. No, is it the same exact date backwards? No, it's not.
No.
If it was 12-12-12, it would be. But it's close. A lot of 2s, a lot of 1s. 2-1-2-1-2.
True.
Yeah, Arizona. I mean, they're Arizona, but they're kind of hot lately. Maybe they, try and put you into a trap game situation. They got Chicago on the road. After that, on the 15th,
The
same
hell-based
deal, just on
schedule.
the road. Minnesota, back-to-back. They go from Chicago to Minnesota back-to-back. Minnesota's struggling right now. They're still 33-19-3 on the season, third in the Central, but they've been struggling mightily lately. Kirill Kaprizov has not been, though. 71 points, including 28 goals in 54 games. You got Capo Kakinen at 12-7-2 in net, 2.86 goals against, 9-12 save percentage. And Cam Talbot, 21-12-1 with a 295 goals against, a 908 save percentage and a shutout. That's a team we talked about. Famelka having a shutout being remarkable with Arizona. How do the Minnesota Wild goalies only have one shutout? It's kind of weird to me. Much better team. Struggling pretty badly lately. They've won 3 of their last 11 games. A team that's probably going to be playing angry, though. They're looking to turn things around. It's still a very good team. It's not like they're just, collapsing. They are collapsing in some extent, but, it's not like they're dealing with a bunch of injuries or anything crazy. That's why they're struggling. Still a very good roster. Still a good team for the Bruins to face. Good test. Other notes, unless you have anything to speak on with those teams.
I do not. Just a minor thing of like a home and home at Chicago schedule-wise would have made more sense there instead of a quick game against Arizona. But
yeah, you'd think so.
That's just minor. Nothing too crazy
so.
to talk about.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm also distracted. I was watching the Celtics game, and they're doing the pre and post game from a movie theater for some reason. It just caught my eye. I have
what?
no idea why. Yeah. No. They're in the middle of a movie theater. Sorry. Got sidetracked. Maybe they're going to Batman.
Some other notes before we I haven't seen that yet. I'm seeing it in like 2 weeks. Ohio State's Mason Lowry, Bruins prospect, 2020 second round pick, named one of the Big Ten Defenseman of the Year finalists, having a phenomenal season at Ohio State, along with Owen Power, the 2021 first overall pick, not a big deal, of the Buffalo Sabres, and Brock Faber, the 45th overall pick in the 2020 draft by the LA Kings. One of the better young defenseman prospects in the world right now. He is becoming a very, very big piece of LA's future. The kid's just very, very good. His development has skyrocketed ever since he was drafted. He's been an amazing fit. Playing internationally and for Minnesota, Owen Power's got 27 points, 3 goals, 24 assists, and a plus 21 rating on that stacked Michigan squad. He'll be on the Buffalo Sabres next season. Brock Faber, more of a defensive shutdown guy, can move the puck as well. 2 goals, 10 points, 12 assists, and a plus 7 rating in 27 games for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They got Mason Lowry with the Buckeyes. 4 goals, 25 assists, 29 points, 31 games, plus 16. Really has become a blue chip prospect for the Bruins. Hopefully they do not trade him at the deadline. I really want to hold on to guys like Mason Lowry and Fabian Lysov for the future. I think this is Owen Power's award to win. He's, a product in part of that stacked Michigan squad, but I'd love to see Lorai win it. Either player has the case of the three, but I'm going with Owen Power in this one. He's the number one overall pick. It'll just add to his accolades as a young player, but I could see Lorai winning it. I'm going Lorai or Power with Faber third in the power rankings of most likely, I'd say, because I think points do matter in this type of situation. Faber does not have more than either of them. Other Bruins prospect notes looking pretty good in the defensive category in the past few drafts. Ty Gallagher, 7th-round pick, playing at BU, named to the Hockey East All-Rookie team. He's got 33 games played in the regular season as they enter the playoffs. 5 goals, 11 assists, and 16 points, and a +8 rating as a freshman top 4 defenseman. Some power play times for the BU Terriers. Very good year for Ty Gallagher. Early on, I was really starting to like the return on that pick. I think the Bruins might have found a real steal in the 7th round. I could absolutely see Ty Gallagher turning into a second or third pair right shot defenseman in the NHL, making the Bruins look like geniuses. Hopefully that ends up being the case, but congrats to Ty and Mason picking up some accolades, making Don Sweeney's drafting look a little better, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. No complaints here.
Absolutely. No complaints from me either. Here's where I'm at the trade deadline. You can chime in whenever you want. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here.
Okay.
Not a rant in a bad way, but just some stuff I want to get off my chest because it's all just collecting in my brain. I'm kind of at the point where I don't think the Bruins are going to trade for a center. And if they do, it's going to be not going to be someone like Hurdle. It's not going to be someone like Giroux. It's not going to be JT Miller. It's not going to be Joe Pavelski. I think Pavelski and Hurdle will stay. I think Giroux will go out west. And I think JT Miller, more likely than not, sounds like will stay at this point in Vancouver. They're more likely to move Brock Besser and or Connor Garland, probably one of the two, more likely. They like JT Miller, rightfully so. Very good player. Good guy. Big piece of their locker room, it sounds like, as well. But yeah, speaking of Paul Stastny, Andrew Kopp, his teammate, is another guy. You know, if they see him as a center more so than a wing, they could put him at second line center, whatever they want. That's another like more low end guy I think they could get, pick up. I think Kopp could cost you like a 2nd-round pick at most, but more likely like a 3rd-round pick, and like either a guy like Zach Senyshyn or like a 6th-round pick next year. Maybe give him like a 2-pick type of return. Both pending UFAs in Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg's going to sell off a few pieces. They're not making the playoffs this year, somewhat surprisingly. So yeah, watch out for Winnipeg still. Brendan Dillon's still an option, but a guy with term. Not sure if they're going to trade him this year or the offseason, but he would be one of my top guys for the Bruins to pick up on the defensive side. Jake DeBrusk will be moved in a deal. We know that for a fact. That his trade request stands pat. I think the most realistic guys right now to get in a Jake DeBrusk deal, I did not include Philip Hedl because I don't think the Bruins will ideally want to trade DeBrusk in the East, but I think Philip Hedl is possible. I think the Bruins could get a pick along with Philip Hedl, but at this point with how DeBrusk is playing, I think Dominic Kubalik, Brandon Hagel in Chicago, Ricard Raquel or Maxime Comtois in Anaheim are the most likely guys the Bruins end up with. Kubalik's an RFA, pretty good player, but kind of like up and down production-wise, inconsistent with Chicago. I'd be fine with having him here, though. I'd rather pay him than DeBrusk because DeBrusk just isn't going to be here next year. I'd rather just, get DeBrusk off the books and get a good return than sign Kubalik in the summer. They should have ample cap space to do so. Brandon Hagel. Brandon Hagel is a very cost-controlled option who's a guy that started out as a prospect that's probably going to be a bottom 6 forward, it looked like, but has played in the top 6 this year and a little bit last year with Chicago and looked really good. He's a left-handed winger who can play the right wing and the left. 2 years of 1.5 per, that'd be a bargain pickup for the Bruins. I don't really know why Chicago would trade him, to be honest. I think this is a guy that still young enough. I think you could keep him as a 2nd or 3rd line winger, a guy that can move up and down the lineup. But if they do trade him, I hope the Bruins are involved. I like Hagel. Guy plays physical, gets in the corners as well. Not shy in that regard. Ricard Raquel, a guy who's been mentioned with the Bruins for a few years now. Bruins and Ducks have trade history. I really, 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 really want Ricard Raquel to be the winger they pick up. I think he's crafty. I think he's like a poor man's Pastrnak in some ways with his skill set. Not like, not going to say he is David Pastrnak, but they kind of remind me stylistically of each other. Maxime Comtois got one more year left at 2.037 million, just to give a weird number because I guess they felt like doing that for him. Comtois in the doghouse. He's kind of like DeBrusque, just not producing as much. He's also dealt with an injury a little bit. He's a guy that kind of plays like an agitator. So if you want like an agitator, a guy who can benefit from more playing time in Boston than Anaheim, you have Sir Comtois. He also has a year left. Or if you want the guy that could be a rental in Rickard Rakell, probably won't be crazy expensive, but a decent price you'll have to pay to get him. You go with Rakell. I'd be cool with either. Preferably Rakell when we're talking Anaheim, though. I feel like you in the past have been on board with Rickard Rakell because we've talked about him before.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about these options?
Rakell, like you said, is the one that stands out because we mentioned him before. The one thing I was going to ask you is just what you see them trading DeBrusque more for. Do you think it would be beneficial to trade him? And you mentioned some guys might come with picks too, with how well DeBrusque has played. But do you think it's beneficial to trade him straight up for the winger? Or do you think it'd be better for them to maybe try to move him for it? Because I don't know if you're in the same boat that I am, that you think they need more a top pairing defenseman or just a better defenseman they have. So that's what I would try to move DeBrusque for. I kind of come off of, like I said, the scoring aspect of trading DeBrusque for. Are you more so looking at you would trade DeBrusque? You would fill DeBrusque's role with another winger kind of similar to him.
Yeah. The DeBrusque thing I see panning out. If they get a winger, it's because they really like the winger.
Okay.
If they feel like they can leverage him for a decent enough upgraded defense, they'll do that. But I think it's more likely that they get a forward. But there are a couple guys I will mention upcoming that I think they could leverage DeBrusque for in a deal for a defenseman. Another note on Brandon Hagel. Interest is intensifying on him. That doesn't necessarily mean Chicago wants to move him, but if they get a really good offer, I can see them moving Brandon Hagel. I think a team that is rebuilding, they do have some big contracts for the next 2 years. I think to get them back into contention slowly, a guy like Brandon Hagel is a guy they want to keep around, but maybe they don't. Maybe they want to just sell high on him. Got really good value with that awesome contract, good production. Guys in his mid-20s, I think, could get a decent return for him. So maybe that's a DeBrusque deal. Maybe the Bruins get Brandon Hagel and a draft pick, and the Blackhawks like what Jake DeBrusque is doing on the right wing, and they put him on the right wing or the left wing in the top 6 in Chicago. Certainly possible. But Kubalik is another guy they could swap for DeBrusque as well. So I'm looking at Chicago. Calle Jarnkrok is a guy I think on the right side they could go for, but I'm leaning on Jarnkrok going to the Leafs because the Leafs have interest in him, and his former agent is the Leafs' current GM, Kyle Dubas. I was thinking Jared McCann. I was writing about Jared McCann, and then, as I have noted in the outline, literally as I was typing about him, he signed a 5-year, $25 million extension with the Seattle Kraken. So that is not happening. Yep. Good for him. A guy that's bounced around a little bit in his career, but over the past few years has had really good underlying metrics. He's an analytics darling, and is scoring a lot. He's a good player. He can drive offense. Wants to be a part of that future clearly, and play a big role for the Seattle Kraken. That's a huge pickup for them. One of the better moves they made in their young tenure as a team, because we know their goaltending is amongst the worst we've ever seen by a goaltending tandem in the NHL in NHL history. So they got to get some wins. They got to take on some bad contracts for draft picks, as we'll talk about a little bit later, and build for next year because they are not making the playoffs. I think Calle Jarnkrok will be traded. DeBrusque likely not involved in a deal for Calle Jarnkrok if the Bruins decide to pursue him, but a guy they could get for like a mid-round draft pick. I would say maybe McCann in a DeBrusque deal, but that's not happening. And the first defenseman I'm going to mention in a Jake DeBrusque deal, I tweeted about it 2 weeks ago, is Vince Dunn. He's got 2 years left at $4 million. I think that's pretty reasonable, maybe a slight overpay for Vince Dunn, but not an egregious one. He's a good young defenseman, former second-round pick. I remember in his draft year, I really wanted the Bruins to draft him, but they did not. I like Vince Dunn. He unfortunately was on that Blues Cup team selected by the Kraken in the expansion draft. I really like him. Good, slick puck mover, smart defenseman. I think his defensive game is improving slowly over time from what I've seen. good player. I'd be really down for it. I don't know why Seattle would trade him, but I think it's certainly possible if they get a good young forward like Jake DeBrusk that could tantalize them to do it. But if somebody wanted to trade him like a draft pick, maybe they won't want to do it. I think that's a type of trade for their future. They'd like to get a good young roster player back, a guy that can help them, versus just a draft pick. I think they're looking for draft picks for expiring contracts like Kelly Yarncroke or to get along with bad contracts. Max Domi is another option, pending UFA. Honestly, having a decent season in Columbus, but this is really just vibes. It doesn't really seem like he's gonna. Sounds so stupid to say. That he's not gonna stick around long term as a pending UFA in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a rental for the Bruins, but maybe the Bruins trade DeBrusk for Domi straight up, or DeBrusk for Domi in a late pick or something, with DeBrusk's value being increased. But it's one I see possible. I don't want it to happen. I'm not a huge fan of Max Domi. I think he's a guy that can get under people's skin, but a guy that takes dumb penalties sometimes. He's not a natural right winger. I don't know if he's really a guy that moves the needle over the way Howell is playing right now. I don't know if he's a guy you have to get to move Eric Howell down in this case. I'd be cool with Howell at this point, unless Domi can step in on the right wing and play pretty good. He has played a little bit of right wing here and there with Columbus this season, but it's not his primary position. But it's possible. I think age, future situation with their team, it's a swap that could make sense. But right now, Columbus is trying to make the playoffs, so I don't know if they're going to move Max Domi. They could get to March 19th or 20th or the 21st. Be like, all right, this isn't happening, and try to move him. That's a deal that could happen on deadline day. But right now, I don't think in the next week or so they're going to be moving him. That could be a last-minute trade for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Realistic options on defense. Calvin DeHaan's a guy we've talked about, pending UFA. Vince Dunn, he's like a somewhat realistic guy. Carson Soucy, a guy that hasn't really been in the rumor mill, but he's like a somewhat realistic guy as well in Seattle as well. I really liked him early in his career in Minnesota before he was selected by the Kraken. I also liked him in college when he was playing in Minnesota Duluth. A guy I've watched for a few years now. I like the player. More of a stay-at-home guy, but a little bit of offense here and there. I like Carson Soucy. Don't know if they'll move him, but I like him as well if he becomes available. Jacob Middleton is a Group 6 UFA. They have rumored interest in. We'll talk about that in a second. Justin Braun, no rumored interest, but a guy they could look at on the right side. I think Justin Braun's going to be one of those guys the team overpays for, though. I'd kind of stay away from him unless he costs you like a third or fourth round pick. Maybe you do it. And Mark Giordano, speaking of the Seattle Kraken, we haven't heard a ton on teams that could be in to him, but a good leader for this Bruins locker room, pending UFA, looking to win a cup, could help the Bruins get there. I think I'd be fine with him playing with Charlie McAvoy. At this point in his career, he's not ideally your top pairing defenseman, but I mean, if he plays there, Grzelcyk plays with Carlo, or Grzelcyk plays with Vakanainen on the third pairing. I don't know if they want to move Vakanainen move Grzelcyk all the way down to the third pairing. Then you go like Riley and Carlo and bench Forbert. I'd be cool with it.
I'd be fine with that, absolutely.
Or you go Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Giordano, Carlo, which I think could really help Brandon Carlo, because Mark Giordano's not prime Flames captain Mark Giordano anymore, but I think he's still solid. And a guy won't cost you a first round pick, I don't think, or anything. Probably cost you a second round pick, maybe a late round pick as well. Maybe you could throw him Zach Senyshyn in a second round pick. A guy, Zach Senyshyn could find a spot more playing time in Seattle. I think the Bruins will still try to move him. He's a Group 6 UFA in the summer. I think they would ideally like to at least get a draft pick for him and not just lose him for nothing. Because he did request a trade. But he's also a huge piece of Providence's team this year. Maybe they just want to keep him around and say, hey, screw your trade request. You help our team. We're going to keep you around because you're scoring and you're helping our prospects. Because he's the leading scorer on Providence last I checked. Less realistic defensive options. Even though this is becoming more realistic, I don't know if the Bruins are going to get Jacob Chychrun. They're firmly in the hunt for him as of last night from Darren Dreger. Brennan Dillon, Nate Schmidt, guys we've talked about, but not super likely ones. Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson. Lindholm and Manson are both pending UFAs. Josh Manson's currently on IR. But Pierre LeBrun mentioned
No
he's the
thanks.
guy that of the two in Anaheim that he thinks would be moved more likely. I don't think it's a long-term thing for Josh Manson, but I really like Josh Manson, but it's a guy I think you'd want on your second pair. Unless the
Hmm.
Bruins were to trade for him and bump Brandon Carlo to the third pair, which I would be fine with,
That
and
wouldn't be
sign
bad
Josh
either.
Manson
Yeah.
for the next few years. I think Josh Manson might be a little too rich for the Bruins. Probably guy looking at 4.75, 5 million a year over 5-6 years. I'd be cool with it if the Bruins didn't have some big contracts already piling up. You got two guys at 3 million. In Forbort and Riley, you got Matt Grzelcyk at 3.68. You got Charlie McAvoy starting to make 9.5 next year. Brandon Carlo making 4.1. I don't know if they'd add Josh Manson to that mix, but it's possible. He also just could be a rental. A guy they really like and they want to bulk up their defense. He could be an option. Hampus Lindholm's another guy. Could be a rental or could be a guy they discuss a long-term extension with. Maybe you sign in Hampus Lindholm and try to move one of Forbort or Riley in the offseason to make yourself some cap space. The Ducks are trying to extend Lindholm. They haven't had a ton of success from the sounds of things. The Bruins could swing big, too, and do a combo deal. Get one of Raquel and Comtois and Lindholm or Manson. So we'll see if that happens. Jacob Middleton, like I mentioned, Group 6 UFA, kind of like a stay-at-home penalty killer, bit of a fighter, physical defenseman, 26 years old. Tampa Bay, St. Louis, and the Bruins are all in on him. The Bruins are also amongst 8 teams seriously in the chase for Jacob Chikrin, along with Florida, who I think he's most likely to end up with. LA could very well end up with. They have tons of young prospects. They could afford to give one or two up for him in a pick. Especially when they're going to make the playoffs, their pick won't be as high as in years past. St. Louis, be tough for him to fit in St. Louis. Don't know about that one. Carolina, I don't think Carolina is going to swing big. They seem like they kind of want to make like a minor move, maybe like a Kelvin DeHaan. And the Anaheim Ducks, maybe they just see him as a guy they can keep long term because he's already under contract over Hampus Lindholm. I'm surprised to see Columbus not in this mix. As anybody who's listened to the past, I predicted
Mm-hmm.
a surprise trade for Columbus to acquire Jacob Chikrin. This is a team that's proven they're close to becoming a playoff contender, more so than they were when I brought that up. I think they have a young goalie they could offer, which I think Arizona will ideally want. They could get in Spencer Knight, which would be wild. Don't know if I'd do that if I'm Florida, but they have Sergei Bobrovsky for the next 5 years, so you're not going to get rid of that contract as much as you can easily move Spencer Knight in a deal for a great young defenseman who's going to be a part of your defensive core for a while and could be wildly good with Mackenzie Weegar or Aaron Ekblad for the next however so many years. I'm going with Florida or LA. I think the Bruins have a chance, but I think Florida or LA could outbid them. And I think they
Mm-hmm.
will. I don't see Jacob Chikrin coming here, but I very much hope I'm wrong because his offensive numbers have and efficiency in terms of all the advanced stats and stuff have been way down this year, but he's playing on a crap team. The past 2 years have been much more favorable in terms of the analytics and all that jazz, and just his overall success on the ice. I still think Jacob Chikrin would be phenomenal, even though he's struggling in some areas this year. Great player, great contract, still very young at 23 years old. That's a win if you get him, unless you drastically overpay. You can leverage Jake DeBrusk's trade value in a deal like that. Maybe you have to give up Mason Lohrei. That's the one deal I am okay with moving Mason Lohrei in. If you
I
get
was
a
gonna ask
legit
you that.
top four defenseman back or a legit guy like JT Miller, I am okay with moving Mason Lohrei.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was what I was. The reason I was going to ask you that is, like I said, I was listening to the Flower Mats. They brought that up, and they said the same thing too. Is it seems like that Arizona wants more so a young goaltender, and they said obviously Florida was the one because of Knight, and they said they obviously wouldn't trade Swayman. They'd be dumb to do that. And they brought up the fact, could Lohrei be a guy that goes out? You give up a young defenseman, get a young defenseman that's already NHL ready. You could probably stick on that top line, and he'd be the guy that closes things out with McAvoy. So that's why I was going to ask you after you talked so highly of Lohrei, would you do him in the deal? And you said
Yeah.
you'd be in. So
Yeah, I would.
I think it's
depending on the
something you
other
have to
pieces
explore.
involved.
Like, yeah, that's
I
true
think
too.
I think you could realistically at this point get Jacob Chikrin for Jake DeBrusk, Mason Lohrei, a first round pick, and like another pick, or like Zach Senyshyn as a throw in,
or
a
yeah.
lower end prospect, maybe like a Jakub Lauko, anyone you could think of. Just throw a name out there, Quinn Olson, someone.
Throw Stanika in that, or is that too much to give up at that point?
Stanika is definitely possible as well. I don't think you're throwing in Vakanainen if you're throwing Lohrei in. I don't think that would be in their best interest. But I mean, the ideal location for Arizona is Florida because Spencer Knight would really accelerate their rebuild. They already have Ivan Provisetsov, who's a fantastic young goalie prospect in the making. It looks like they could just have an awesome tandem for a little bit of those two and just like win tons of games based off their goaltending if they both pan out. Because Spencer Knight very much could be an elite goalie. I think Provisetsov could be a pretty elite, or maybe not elite, but a pretty good NHL goalie as well. The turnout looks pretty good on him. But we'll see. Jacob Middleton is going to be a cheaper guy, probably a guy you can get for like a third-round pick maybe. I think it's just a sense where San Jose could keep him around because he's young, but they're very much slipping out of the playoff race. They're not going to make it at this point unless they go on a crazy run. And, maybe they just want to get the pick for him. They don't see him as a huge part of their future for whatever reason. And they want to give him a shot somewhere else. I think that's really what it is. Maybe this is coming up because a team like the Bruins or the Lightning or the St. Louis Blues are ready to offer something fairly significant for Jacob Middleton. Maybe they could get a second-round pick and, that's worth it to us. Sell high on him because, this is a guy that hasn't proven himself consistently yet, but just some notes there. The pipe dream scenario for the Bruins, I'll throw out just for fun, is Philip Forsberg to me. I'm still really surprised to some extent that Nashville is even considering moving him, but they do have some big contracts. They do have Matthias Ekholm making more money starting next year. You can't just have a bunch of huge contracts. Forsberg's good for 8 or 9, maybe 10 million on his next deal. So they're going to move him. Doesn't sound like they're on the right page on contract negotiations. He would be a rental. He's not signing long-term with the Bruins if they get him. I don't think the Bruins will get him, but the Bruins could throw an offer like Jake DeBrusk, a first-round pick. I think you'd have to give up Fabian Lysell probably in that deal. Maybe not because it's a rental, but I think that deal starts and ends with Fabian Lysell. If you're not willing to give up Lysell for Forsberg, it's not happening with the Bruins. I think that's what Nashville's going to go for. David Poile is a very experienced GM. He's been stubborn at times. I think he's not going to get that deal done without Lysell or Lohrei. I'm not giving up Lohrei for Philip Forsberg because it's 1 year. If you're getting it for an established defenseman like Chychrun, I would. But this is a pipe dream scenario. The Bruins would have to give it up an arm and a leg. Personally, I think Philip Forsberg ends up with the Rangers in a package, including Philip Hedl for salary reasons. Nils Lundqvist, Vitaly Kravtsov, a first-round pick, and probably more. I think that's the best fit for him. The Rangers want to compete. They want to add some scoring up front. They could use him as a rental. They can afford to move some of these young players because their rebuild's going very well. It's not like they will cripple themselves. I think the New York Rangers end up with Philip Forsberg for a deal similar to that. But a guy like Vitaly Kravtsov might be a hard guy to trade right now with what is going on in Russia and the NHL severing ties with the KHL for the foreseeable future. So maybe Vitaly Kravtsov is just stuck in Russia. Maybe he's not an asset for the Rangers to trade anymore. Crazy situation going on in Russia. We know what the deal is over there. We're not a political podcast, so we're not going to get into it too deep. We're also not experts on it, so it's not our space. Other things on the Bruins for the trade deadline. Not our specialty, not our forte. I think the Bruins could absolutely try to dump John Moore and or Chris Wagner's contracts at the deadline this year for whatever.
Both those two guys play here, to be honest.
It sucks because, me personally, I still love Chris Wagner. I love what he's brought in the past. I still do think he's an NHL player, but I think him making more than he's worth is the reason, and obviously having Curtis Lazar now, Craig Smith in the mix is the reason Chris Wagner's down in the minors. I think with teams like Buffalo, Seattle, Arizona, I think even maybe New Jersey. New Jersey hasn't been mentioned in that list, but I think New Jersey could take on some contracts for picks, if the deal is right. At some point, I think you could absolutely move one, if not both of these guys at deadline, maybe this is the deal we see Zach Senyshyn attached to as a sweetener to take on one of these contracts. It just makes a lot of sense. These aren't guys whose buried money that, they make. What is it? I have it written down in here.
4.2
the 4.2
combined,
million combined between them. Yeah, it counts for 1.85 against the NHL salary cap. The rest is, not counting against the NHL salary cap. If you get up from under that, it just helps you a little bit. If the Bruins really feel eager enough to do so, and or just give these guys a fresh start with a new team. Maybe a team, they could play some NHL minutes for the latter half of the season, like a non-playoff team, like any of these teams that could afford to play these guys. It's whatever, it's just whatever to these guys. I don't think at this point, with John Morley having 2 years left, you'd have to give up like a really significant pick to get rid of his contract, but maybe like a second round pick at best. But I don't think that's like a guaranteed asset they'd have to give up. But yeah, Bill Armstrong, perfect timing to bring this up too. He says the Coyotes have about $30 million in cap space. So
Jesus.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Why are you not using that in the slice?
They're gonna have to give Nick Ritchie that big boy extension in 2 summers.
Yeah.
So they gotta keep some of that space. Don't get too big for your britches down there, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what Bill Armstrong said is really just wrong in terms of their projected cap space. He didn't specify this, so it probably confused some people. Their projected cap space right now is $6.5 million, but their deadline cap space per cap friendly is $32.5 million. So he should have specified that, but I'm not going to really fault him for not doing so. But just to clarify anybody, because he didn't mention it, and at first I was like, wait a minute, there's no way. Like, I wouldn't know if they had $30 million in cap space. But then I looked at cap friendly, saw their deadline cap space, like, oh, that's what he's referring to. Okay. Yeah, this is a deal I could see Zach Senyshyn attached to. Maybe they try and offload John Moore's contract and Zach Senyshyn in a pick and a Phil Kessel deal. That's not likely, but I think it's certainly possible.
I wouldn't hate
if they're willing to retain salary, why not, with all this cap space, see if they'll take a bad contract as well if you throw in a sweetener along with the pick. It could happen. They have so much cap space, they can afford it. Maybe they take Chris Wagner too in a pipe dream scenario and just take all the bad contracts.
Take everybody.
You get a bad contract. You get a bad contract. You all get bad contracts. Seattle too, for their regard, and they need picks and prospects to build up their prospect corp. So they're going to take on bad contracts to build things up. Makes a lot of sense. That's it. It's a long show. Our longest in a few weeks, I'd say.
It was a long ride home
Anything
for you,
for
so
you?
It makes sense.
Long ride home for you. My neck hurts from sitting like this.
I know, this chair's very uncomfortable.
Good thing I got a Theragun. I need that. Best invention in the entire world in human history. I'm going to need it badly on my upper back and my neck. My upper back just hurts from sitting in the office all day at a
work
desk.
and then just in your car on the drive home.
When I'm sitting at work, I always, like, when I'm like dialed in, like I'm working on something, I always just hunch for like, out of just impulse, but I shouldn't. I try to monitor it, but thank God I have a Theragun to help with that type of stuff, because that's what it's invented for. Anything that you want to add on the Bruins side of things before we wrap things up here?
Not that I haven't already said. I don't want to regurgitate old stuff, but basically, like, again, with trades and stuff, you mentioned plenty of defensemen. Just obviously don't know as much about the players as you do, but to me, it's just any one of these guys. I keep harping on it. Anyone can profile as a top pairing defenseman to take some heat off of McAvoy, because like we said at the start of the Bruins stuff, at least me, I think you said you felt the same way. It looks like they're starting to kind of run him thin a little bit, and it's obviously showing with these game collapse is a strong word, because not like they're blowing 2-3 goal leads late, but it is a little concerning that you're giving up goals with less than 30 seconds left. So to me, that screams you'd help in front of the net. The goalies can't do it all. Like, you got to go and get somebody that can help out, guys like McAvoy, and if Carlos starts to turn it around, you can, like you said, move him around and try to figure out your defense and go with what you have on offense. But that's where I'm at right now.
One thing I did just find out, one last hockey shout out, my brother's intramural team won their intramural championship tonight, 9-0. So
Very
from
nice.
from one intramural champion to another.
There you go.
Welcome to the club. Well, I'll let you know, Drew, if you're listening to this, when we have the parade for after you graduate. Because we're not doing that during your school year. You got to enjoy your final days of college, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you're listening. You better be listening. You're my brother. Support me.
It's a problem if it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check in with him, see if he listens.
Mhm.
I don't even know if he does, but it's a senior year. I'm gonna cut him some slack if he's not.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna wrap it up. Episode 85 in the books, the long one, the Hunter Henry episode. Thank you so much for listening. Whether you're new, whether you're old, we had our most listens of all time on an episode last week, most downloads. Thank you so much. This new platform has been amazing for us. We're reaching people across the world. Tons of new listeners. Like I expected our listeners to go up, but not as much as they have. It's blown me away. It's blown Ryan away. It's so awesome. Thank you so much. Like as I'm looking away at from the screen right now, looking at the outline here. Thank you so much for listening. You can listen on Megaphone. You can listen on the Full Press Coverage app. You can download for free on the App Store. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, a bunch of other random ones. We'll be on Amazon and iHeartRadio if we're not already at some point in the near future. I honestly haven't checked. I really just thought of that now, but I'll have to check in with Ian Glendon on that, our boy at Full Press Coverage, who helps us with all the logistical stuff. We'll have to check that out. But, just keep that in mind if you're on iHeartRadio or Amazon. If it's not already there, you can go check. If you do check and you find out we're there before we do, or do you just want to let us know? Let us know. Maybe I'll check tonight or tomorrow or something. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Mike_Cratty. You can follow Ryan at Ryan_Salvaggio. You can follow the show at Sal and Cratty Pod. Salvaggio and Cratty, if you throw that into the search bar on TikTok. We'll start posting more, I promise. I say this every week, but this week I'm serious. We'll throw some clips up there from the show or something. Maybe I think I'm going to do some trade grades ahead of the NHL trade deadline for the bigger moves. I'll do a little video on that because God knows anybody who listens to this knows that I love talking about shit like that. So I'll do it. I'll promise that to you. And if not, if you see me in the street, you can I don't know, yell at me. Don't hit me or anything or run me over with your car. But
make sure if you do trade grades, if there's a team that is rebuilding and they sell off a lot of their pieces, don't label them as losers, their fans as losers, because I got blasted for some reason doing that when I did the baseball once. And
that's numbies though. That's numbies. We'll get engagement on that though. I'll just be an asshole.
But yeah, I was appalled. Where I was like, yeah, the Cubs fans are losers because they traded their 5 best players away, and everyone's like, how do you call the Cubs losers? They rebuild it. It's rebuilt. I'm like,
heads up, Leafs fans. Leafs fans, if you heist JT Miller, and there are any Leafs fans out there, we have a lot of Canadian listeners. If you heist JT Miller for a 4th-round pick and freaking Nick Abruzzese, I'm gonna give you an F just to piss you off. I'll let you.
That doesn't seem very fair.
So keep that in mind.
The team traded more. He can't have biases.
I know. I'm just goofing. Man, I need to rest. I need to, as this episode is processing, hit the massage gun and shit, and maybe watch the end of the Merrimack game if that's still going on. Go Merrimack.
They actually, that's what I was going to say. They won. They won 6-2, I think, 7-2. So they move on to the.
Let's go. It was 3-1 after the second period. Merrimack's a wagon. Watch out.
Yep.
They could get into the tournament either at an at-large bid or if they win the Hockey East. So we'll see.
Win the Hockey East.
Episode 86 next week, next Wednesday. Hopefully we won't have snow to delay me from getting home. Hopefully I won't have to eat steak and cheese nachos on the air. I love you, all of you.
Guarantee we won't have baseball.
Guarantee we won't have baseball.
That's one guarantee I can make right now.
Yeah. For me and Ryan, to you, enjoy the upcoming week ahead. Enjoy the weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. Stay safe, stay healthy, be nice to people, all that good stuff. We'll talk to you then. Peace.